I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the name of God, Amen. We, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, Defender of the Faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and the honor of our King and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, for our better ordering and preservation, and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers, from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod, the 11th of November, in the reign of our sovereign Lord King James, of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland the 54th, Anno Domini, 1620.
The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me, the cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him. the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare at your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me.
In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. You know, I'm a 960 SAT guy.
Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring towards him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands.
I've served this country for 14 years in the Congress, and before that in the service. I have just as high a devotion, just as high an opinion. What I downgrade, Mr. Nixon, is the leadership the country's getting, not the country. Now, I didn't make most of the statements that you said I made. I believe the Soviet Union is first in outer space. We may have made more shots, but the size of their rocket thrust and all the rest. You yourself said to Khrushchev, you may be ahead of us in rocket thrust, but we're ahead of you in color television, in your famous discussion in the kitchen. I think that color television is not as important as rocket thrust. Secondly, I didn't say we had the worst slums in the world. I said we had too many slums, and that they are bad, and we ought to do something about them. And we ought to support housing legislation, which this administration has opposed. I didn't say we had the worst education in the world. What I said was that 10 years ago, we were producing twice as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union, and today they're producing twice as many as we are, and that this affects our security around the world. And fourth, I believe that the polls and other studies and votes in the United Nations and anyone reading the paper and any citizen of the United States must come to the conclusion that the United States no longer carries the same image of a vital society on the move with its brightest days ahead as it carried a decade or 2 decades ago. Part of that is because we've stood still here at home, because we haven't met our problems in the United States, because we haven't had a moving economy.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeat in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? The Lord is with me. He is my helper. I look in triumph on my enemies. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They surrounded me on every side, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They swarmed around me like bees, but they were consumed as quickly as burning thorns. In the name of the Lord I cut them down. I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation.
The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to second achievement. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Too many of us think it is impossible. Too many think it is unreal. But that is a dangerous, defeatist belief. It leads to the conclusion that war is inevitable, that mankind is doomed, that we are gripped by forces we cannot control. We need not accept that view. Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who move forward, and so will space. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the name of God, Amen. We, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, Defender of the Faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and the honor of our King and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, for our better ordering and preservation, and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers, from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod, the 11th of November, in the reign of our sovereign Lord King James, of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland the 54th, Anno Domini, 1620.
The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me, the cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced, with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare at your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. You know, I'm a 960 SAT guy.
Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring towards him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands,
I've served this country for 14 years in the Congress and before that in the service. I have just as high a devotion, just as high an opinion. What I downgrade, Mr. Nixon, is the leadership the country's getting, not the country. Now, I didn't make most of the statements that you said I made. I believe the Soviet Union is first in outer space. We may have made more shots, but the size of their rocket thrust and all the rest. You yourself said to Khrushchev, you may be ahead of us in rocket thrust, but we're ahead of you in color television, in your famous discussion in the kitchen. I think that color television is not as important as rocket thrust. Secondly, I didn't say we had the worst slums in the world. I said we had too many slums, and that they are bad, and we ought to do something about them, and we ought to support housing legislation, which this administration has opposed. I didn't say we had the worst education in the world. What I said was that 10 years ago, we were producing twice as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union, and today they're producing twice as many as we are, and that this affects our security around the world. And fourth, I believe that the polls and other studies and votes in the United Nations and anyone reading the paper and any citizen of the United States must come to the conclusion that the United States no longer carries the same image of a vital society on the move with its brightest days ahead as it carried a decade or 2 decades ago. Part of that is because we've stood still here at home, because we haven't met our problems in the United States, because we haven't had a moving economy.
It's never too Good evening, everyone. Welcome to American Advocates. This will be episode 195, coming to you guys live on, we're going to still say August 20th, 2026, for the sake of synchronicity if I'm ever looking back on these streams. August 20th, 2026. Technically August 21st, because I'm a little late. But I had a lot going on during the pre-show there and even before then because there's so much that I want to talk about tonight. As you all know, last night I did sort of briefly mention the Lindsay Clancy case, the Lindsay Clancy trial going on. And I wanted to talk about it last night, but there was just a lot to talk about last night because 2 nights ago I didn't go live and James Fishback lost in the GOP primaries of Florida, and Turkey and Israel were making major moves, and there was a lot of geopolitical developments going on. So those 2 topics kind of took up so much time that by the time I got to where I wanted to discuss Lindsay Clancy and the entirety of what's going on centered around that trial, and really more so what's happening outside of the trial with the American public, I was starving, it was late, I was getting tired, and I said, you know what, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Thinking, of course, at that time last night, well, I've already seen the worst of it, public-wise. It can't get any worse anyway, and I'll save it for tomorrow. And then I woke up this morning, and I went on social media, and my God, it's getting worse. It's getting worse with these people, with these women. They are out of control. The conspiracy theories, the rabid support, the cult-like following now, and cultish support of Lindsay Clancy, who, by the way, they're closing in on raising $1 million for in aid. Of course, justifying it by saying it's going to her parents, who have done nothing but unwaveringly support their daughter who murdered their grandchildren. The conspiracy theories blaming the husband, the conspiracy theories, blaming everything else, the attacks on the husband for not being supportive enough, the women posting their TikToks, holding their newborn, saying, "Me too, Lindsay, me too, I feel like murdering my child too." The women showing up outside the courtroom to greet her and give her a hero's welcome and applaud her, writing on their shirts, "I stand in peace for Lindsay." It is out of control. It is out of control, and it really does just expose the fact that here in America, we are now in the death thralls of fourth wave postmodern feminism. And that's what I'm going to get into for the main story tonight. There is other developments going on geopolitically, and I know some people tune in just for my geopolitical takes, and that's what I'm going to talk about first, because there is another major development taking place with Iran and Trump, not so much in the Middle East, war-wise or, kinetically speaking, but now economically. Before we get into the Lindsay case, we've got to talk about this, because today, President Donald Trump put his plan in action to wage an economic warfare against Iran, to hit them back. Them closing the Strait of Hormuz and keeping it closed is their economic warfare against us, truthfully, and against them as it is. Now, Trump is also threatening to impose even stricter sanctions, and moreover, he threatened the entire world today, actually. I mean, truthfully. And it's sort of, in some sense, it's actually badass, just to be frank with you, but it's not good either. So we're going to get into that as well. Trump basically telling the whole world today, hey, fuck off. If you support Iran, we're going to sanction you into oblivion. We will crush your economy. After the fact that Trump started this Iran war, which is crushing the global economy as a result, he now looks at the entire world and says, if you support Iran from now on, we're crushing you with sanctions and all kinds of weaponized dollar tactics. It's going to be a disaster, and we're going to get into that first and foremost here when it comes to all of that. So Trump weaponizing the dollar, more sanctions being used against Iran and possibly anybody supporting them. What problems will that entail? We're going to get into that, as well as Lindsay Clancy. I'm going to go off. This will be a very offensive stream for a lot of people. Anybody that's watching will probably wind up being offended, and I'm more than okay with that because this needs to be discussed. So please, before I manage to offend you so much that you unsubscribe, leave the channel, and never come back, the least you could do right now is like the stream. Double tap your phone screens or hit the thumbs up button because it's free to do, and it does encourage YouTube's algorithm to push the show out to more people who need to see this content. There's no excuse not to. I also want to thank BeckFan in the horizontal stream for sending me the $2 super chat tariff there at the beginning, as well as thanking Michael Cox. Last night I saw one of my loyal viewers, Michael Cox, was, of course, he had sent a super chat that I missed somehow for a stick of gum, in his words. And we always try to recognize the super chats on this channel. So thank you, Michael Cox, for the super chat last night that I sadly wound up missing. But let's get into all of this right here, right now. So here's the deal. This was President Donald Trump's Truth Social post today. I'll read it in his voice for your amusement. No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today, I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. Their navy is gone, their air force is destroyed, their military factories are now rubble, their currency is worthless, and their country is hanging by a thread. Today, I am also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous economic consequences. Oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies, it all needs to stop now. You know who you are. There will be an economic D-Day, and we need all of our allies to stand with the United States of America to isolate and defeat the Iran threat. These maniacs are on the ropes, and these historic measures will cripple them and their ability to project terror worldwide. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Oh, man. That's great. All right, so that was the statement from President Donald Trump today. That was a True Social post put up on Twitter. And then if you want to see what happened here, it was, well, let me show you that too. It was retweeted by Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent. You can see that right there. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent retweeted it and said, any remaining tie to Tehran will hasten a nation's economic oblivion, whether that tie be purposefully constructed or willfully ignored. So, let's get into this. This is Trump's latest strategy now, as we all recognize that, like I've been saying on this channel from the start, Iran has strategically and masterfully managed to be able to shift this war, despite the fact that Trump re-acknowledges the fact at the end that they can't have a nuclear weapon. This war is not even about that anymore. This war, to the United States, to Trump himself at this point, though he still manages or purposefully even mentions the nuclear thing, that has just become the excuse, because in truth it was always the excuse. It was never actually the real threat that they wanted you to believe it was. It was the goy slop they were feeding the dumb Americans to be able to sucker all the American public into supporting this war. It didn't work anyways, by the way. And now we're at this point where Iran, like I said they would, and like they ultimately did, and like I've been analyzing and reporting that they've done, has masterfully and strategically shifted and transformed the focus and nature of this war from that of previously being about possibly regime change, but maybe not, maybe about liberation, but not really, because we don't actually care about the Persians at all, and it's all just liberal. It was the Republicans' version of bleeding heart liberalism. Basically, don't you care about the Persians? No, actually, we don't. And the Republican Party quickly identified that, like always, us conservatives, we carved our hearts out a long time ago. We care about fiscal stuff. We care about the U.S. economy, and we care about affordability. We don't care about Persians and their liberation. That's their job. It has nothing to do with me. Empathy is not for conservatives. It's for liberals who actually are stupid enough to believe in the concept of empathy. So they ditched that. They ditched the regime change thing because it's not popular and it comes with too many negative connotations. And they rode out the whole nuclear thing for as long as possible because it's big and bad and scary. In the words of Mark Levin at one point, they could have a nuclear dirty bomb pointed at New York City, Manhattan right now. We gotta do something. Well, that never came into fruition either, and increasingly more Americans are just not buying it anymore. Tulsi Gabbard's intelligence indicated in the official reports that Iran was nowhere close to having it. The war has waged on way longer than they told us, as we are now approaching the, 5-month mark now? 6-month mark, is it? Yeah, 6 months soon. And Iran masterfully and strategically moved and transformed our focus to the Strait of Hormuz by closing it down within the first week of being attacked, and in doing so, essentially crippling the entire global economy and affecting the U.S. economy as a result. Oil reserves are running out and running dry. We've expended a large portion of our high-grade munitions and our defensive capabilities in the Middle East over this. And the bond markets here in America are beginning to respond accordingly and appropriately to the realities of all of this, as are the oil markets, the diesel crack spread, everything. All of it is now finally showing signs of breaking, no longer responding as significantly to Trump's Sunday night / early Monday morning, gaslighting, manipulative Truth Social posts about a deal is near. And so the pressure is on, and the Strait of Hormuz still remains closed, and Iran has vowed that it would always be closed. That's what the war is all about now. The strategic victory for Trump at this point is finding a way to walk away while also returning the Strait of Hormuz to pre-February 28th conditions. And so as a result of that, and recognizing that Iran has been weaponizing the long game, playing out the game of attrition here, and weaponizing the global economy and really the U.S. economy against all of us, Trump has now decided, similar to how Iran mines the Strait of Hormuz and creates their own blockade, and Trump responds with a naval blockade. Well, now we're watching this point be played out with President Donald Trump, where he's finally responding to the latest developments, or what really has been always the strategy of Iran, that being, again, weaponizing the global economy against us by attempting to further buckle down on their economy. But there's a lot of problems with this. Mainly, Iran's resolve, first and foremost. Their ability to resist these efforts, their resolve as a nation, is going to be the first roadblock for President Donald Trump. Moreover, and I'm going to get into this in a second as well, it's not actually just Iran now that's going to be a problem for Trump's new economic D-Day warfare strategy against Iran, because a lot of countries do business with Iran and will be very likely affected by these sanctions, because some countries will not look at this and decide to cut and sever ties with Iran for good reason. And the country I'm most going to focus on for this analysis tonight is, of course, China. As I've mentioned several times on this channel, China is one of Iran, if not Iran's largest customer when it comes to oil. I mentioned early on, in fact, that Iran was responsible for something to the effect of 70 to 80% of all Asian oil, and predominantly that China was the biggest buyer, of course, being the biggest nation in that region, consuming the oil. So China is a massive customer. Trump is now essentially threatening in this kind of a post that if China continues to be a consumer of Iranian oil and a buyer of it, then I guess we're going to sanction China. And you can see how that's going to be problematic, but I'm going to explain it in great detail in a minute. First, I want to cover Iran's resistance and resolve to this, though, because that in and of itself is already the biggest problem, and Trump doesn't even realize it. Or more appropriately said, Trump refuses to recognize it, and nobody in his administration is willing to recognize it either. So we're going to get into that. Again, like the stream if you haven't already, double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button. That's free to do, and it does encourage YouTube's algorithm to push this show out to more people who need to see this. And, of course, subscribe, especially if it's not your first time being here. So let's get into this, because the problem with Iran's resolve level in all of this is they've been sanctioned now for years, decades even. And the United States has been waging this economic warfare against Iran throughout the past now for decades because of our displeasure over their actions or their regional purposes or anything else you can name. We've been sanctioning them for decades, and it has literally never worked. Iran refuses to change, they refuse to yield, and in many ways, actually, as a result of this, the Iranian people, over years of hardships that have been imposed on them as a result of the U.S. sanctions being used against them, they've in many ways learned to just simply adapt to this. Their economy has been shit for years as a result of this, and they still not only exist, but in many ways we actually see them thrive, at least militarily speaking. So it doesn't work. The sanctions have yet to work thus far. And the ways that we've seen them adapt, first of all, their resolve is hardened as a people. It's not to say that the people won't get fed up at some point in time and perhaps revolt against the government. That's a possibility, and I'll get to that in a second as well. But what is really important to note when it comes to Iran is they have managed to adapt and really find workarounds to the U.S. sanctions. They've created entire black markets and even naval vessels that are more unmarked or stealthy to skirt around U.S. sanctions and make a full profit anyway. President Donald Trump even says, he even sort of acknowledges this in his Truth Social posts in a way that people who aren't really studied up on this might not recognize. But he calls this out. He says oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies. He says that all needs to stop now. Why? Because those are all the workarounds, or some of those are workarounds at least, that Iran has developed and constructed as a result of the necessity of needing to do so because of being sanctioned by the United States for literally decades now, without reprieve, without break, and without mercy. So they're adapted in this way, not just the resolve of the people or of the country in just bearing and grinning it, but also they're adapted in problem solving and working around the U.S. sanctions. And that's why it's so important to understand that these sanctions not only don't work, but most importantly, even from a logical standpoint here, if they haven't worked for decades and they haven't changed the resolve of the Iranian people, then what makes President Donald Trump now think that this will force them to open the Strait of Hormuz? They will not open that strait. These sanctions will not and cannot force them to open the Strait of Hormuz, which is, again, at this point in time, Trump's literal current biggest issue in the Middle East. He can't open the Strait of Hormuz by any means, Trump. There's no actual method he can take that is feasible to reopen it. He wants to try to insist that it's open now, but every time he does and an oil tanker tries to slip through, Iran bombs it and blows it up at this point. We have seen dozens now of oil tankers over the last 2.5 months try to follow Trump's advice and pass through the Strait of Hormuz, bordering the Omani sovereign waters, the 2-mile sovereignty of their waters, of their one sea channel that is not international waterways, south of Lyric Island. And almost not every time. There are ships making it through, but the numbers are in single digits per day, which is just entirely unacceptable for the region from a global economic standpoint. That region was filled with oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz before this war at levels of, on low ends, 80 ships per day, and on high ends, up to 140 plus ships per day were in and out of the Strait of Hormuz before February 28th when we bombed Iran and they closed it. We are now at a point where there are entire days where not a single ship escapes or exits the strait, or enters for that matter. We're at a point where most days we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 7 total ships entering or exiting the Strait of Hormuz. It's an abysmal number. And every time Trump tries to encourage more of them to bypass the IRGC's plans of passing through their designated channel between Lyric Island and Keshem Island in order so that these ships can be charged a toll, a fee, they're calling it, because tolls are internationally illegal, but fees are not. A fee, an environmental fee, essentially. Every time Trump encourages these ships to not take that route and bypass them, the IRGC lives up to their threats and blows up the ships, or at least tries to. But they've been more than successful enough for their threats to carry weight, and it's becoming a massive problem. Trump can't send in the military. That's political poison. It's not savory to the American people. It would require boots on the ground. We've already expent a lot of our high-grade munitions, and our defensive capabilities are running so low that the U.S. armed forces in the Middle East have openly reported now that they just openly can't defend against every strike from Iran anymore, and have been resorting to selectively deciding what targets are acceptable susceptible to be hit and lost to Iranian ballistic missiles, and which ones need to be defended by our Patriot interceptor missiles. So we are in a weakened state, and we are in a powerless state in the region. Trump has already lost, and like I said months ago, he was placed into checkmate all those months ago and never realized it. Now he's desperately looking just for a way to get out. He has already tried to negotiate with Iran to get them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. They refuse. They said since week 1 of March, when they closed it, that they would never reopen it again for free, and that the Americans must leave the Persian Gulf region. That has been their vow, and they have done nothing but stick to it. So this is now Trump's basically, in my opinion, this is really his last resort. Like I mentioned and covered on prior episodes, I believe the Trump administration quietly has been making preparations on possibly, at least, of course, going nuclear and launching a nuclear warhead on Iran, perhaps on Pickaxe Mountain. But when it comes to achieving actual victory, the nuke wouldn't work either. And in many ways, it would turn the United States into a global pariah alongside our best buddies, Israel. And moreover, it would garner even more support for Iran rather than less, because they would now be the victims of a nuclear atrocity. And again, if Iran was left standing in any way, militarily speaking, which they would be, the strait still wouldn't reopen after a nuke was dropped on them either. So Trump is now looking to economic warfare with the sanctions. And like I just said, they already have their bypasses for these sanctions, the black markets and the stealth ships and the cash payments and the storage houses and everything else you can name, the ghost companies. This is nothing new to the Iranian people, who have built up a resolve over the years of living in a government of a country that has been sanctioned for decades and refusing to yield. Moreover, again, because of this war, there's currently the rally around the flag effect that I've expressed on this channel when it comes to Iran. They are not, at this point in time at least, eager to rise up in a rebellious-like form and start a civil war to take power away from the current Iranian regime. They're more angry at the United States than they are at their own government, which for some reason here in America is very hard to fathom if you're a MAGA cultist chud, like so many of you low-IQ swine in chat are. Most people can't actually fathom that, despite the fact that we all lived through 9/11 and we literally saw the same rally around the flag effect on September 12th, 2001. That's what's happening in Iran. So right now, their priorities aren't even focused on regime change from the ground up, from a authentic, rebellion rising up. So this is not going to work, is really the whole point in all of this, because again, the whole war now is about the Strait of Hormuz reopening so that Trump doesn't look like an absolute idiot loser fool, which is of course what he is for starting this war. They won't reopen it because of the sanctions. It's not going to work, and that's what it's about. Now, additionally, they've already stated, and this is important to note too, the sanctions are in place to try to bully Iran to reopen the strait. They vowed to leave it closed and never reopen it for free again. Not that they won't reopen it, by the way. It's just they want the United States, and they're demanding the United States to explicitly acknowledge that Iran will now control the strait, despite the fact that it's international waters. That is really what this is all boiling down to. We must now, in order for this to all end, acknowledge that Iran controls the strait going forward. That was one of the conditions of the Memorandum of Understanding. Here's what's important to note. Trump obviously doesn't want to do that. Doing that is a surrender. Doing that makes him look bad. It's a loss. It will ruin it. His legacy is already ruined, but he still believes he can save it. He can't, by the way. Spoiler alert. This war has ruined Trump's legacy, and he will be remembered as the idiot president that finally gave Israel what they wanted with Iran. Nevertheless, he still thinks there's a chance. Here's the deal. Iran has already put out public statements regarding the Strait of Hormuz, saying that they're not even really all that interested in negotiating with the U.S. anymore. They believe us to be deceptive and too easily influenced by Israel, the snakes, the little Satan. They believe that we are too easily influenced, deceptive, and that Trump really is just a servant of Israel. Moreover, Trump also is just a dishonest person, according to them, and they don't even really want to negotiate with us. They've cut off all backwater channels. They have already acknowledged that they believe that the prior mediators throughout all of this were working for Trump or for Israel or both. They don't want to go through those channels, which are how they normally go, through a sneakier method of negotiating and even possibly compromising. They've cut that off. And then additionally, they've said we're not talking directly with Washington or Trump anymore, and we really don't plan on doing that anymore either. They've already put out that their terms now will be nothing short of Trump resubmitting to the memorandum of understanding that he's technically already signed twice. And in that MOU, obviously, what he signed and agreed to, the terms, no more war in Lebanon by Israel, no more war in Gaza by Israel, no more war in the Middle East, period. The Americans must withdraw forces from the Persian Gulf, and Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz and leaves it free for all for the first 60 days so all stranded ships can leave freely. But going forward after 60 days, Iran will charge their fee, which they've already discussed and determined will likely be anywhere between 5 to 7% of total cargo value on each vessel. This is their terms, and they have already explicitly stated beyond that if these terms are not agreed to, they will be going on the offensive against the United States and launching infinitely more ballistic missiles and drone attacks on U.S. forces, on all U.S. allied forces, like some of the Persian Gulf states, and on Israel. And they've given Trump a 4-week deadline to re-acknowledge the MOU or face warfare. Iran is now going on the aggressive, looking for the killing blow against the United States military-industrial complex and war machine. This is their demands. And then moreover, beyond that, why these sanctions won't work is because they've put the 4-week deadline on before they go on the offensive. Their resolve is already hardened, like I've explained, due to decades of already being sanctioned. They're religious zealots about all of this. Their vows they intend on keeping. They have vowed to never reopen the strait for free. And they've also vowed that they'll just keep the Strait of Hormuz closed entirely until the year 2029 when a new president is in office, if needed. This should tell you everything you need to know about Iran. Because the Strait of Hormuz being closed does hurt Iran as it is also. Karg Island is incredibly important to Iran when it comes to oil exports, and oil exports themselves are incredibly important to Iran's entire economy, as it makes up, I believe, anywhere between 30 or 40% of their total GDP, if not more, actually. So they're hurt by this. And this is something I've always said and acknowledged on this channel. It's not like Iran is the one that's doing super well. They're just strategically making all of the better moves against the United States, and they're dominating President Donald Trump strategically and militarily for that matter. We have seen how ineffective the United States has become when it comes to the latest evolvement of modern warfare. Our military truly seems to have peaked in the 1990s, and for as powerful as our Navy is, it really is a Navy that is cut in half when it comes to its capabilities in the Middle East region. Bye-bye, Shabbat Shalom. We don't tolerate spam in this chat. You can free speech all you want, say whatever you want, but no spam. So that is one of the biggest issues, and modern warfare we're behind on. Everything else, Iran's now threatening to go on the offensive, and in addition to all of that, the fact that they said they're willing to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed until 2029 also tells you where their mindset is at when it comes to their economic suffering. Because make no mistake about it, we're crippling their economy right now. The real moral of the story is they don't give a fuck. They do not care. They will, because of a combination of their religion and their resolve and their experience through decades of sanctions, they will suffer and they plan to endure. I also have covered this in the past because this is important to recognize. Not only is it all of that playing a part here too, but in addition to that, I reported on this a while back, they've already instated their newest round of Iranian political leadership and generals, etc., who are rigid hardliners. And the reason why they did this was not just for negotiating purposes against the United States and for military action in the future that they're preparing to do and unleash on us, but additionally, they've instated a lot of these hardliners in preparation for if their economy really hits rock bottom and it does lead to an internal revolution attempt in their country by Iranians/Persians. Of which, if they do that, they will quell it. We already saw the attempt for Persian liberation before the start of this war on February 28th. What did Iran do? They literally turned off parts of their electrical grid, blocked the entire internet for their country, and put to death or just shot in the streets likely 25, 30, 35, or even 40,000 possible Persian revolutionaries in their country, Iranian revolutionaries in their country. They destroyed the rebellion attempt as it is. They've already crushed it. Another future one will result in just the same actions. And this would be the goal of President Donald Trump outright in waging this economic D-Day war now against Iran. The intended result would be a rebellion that rises up that leads to a civil war, inner turmoil, and ultimately a regime change. They've already quelled the first one. They'll just do it again. And the second one will be weaker because Iran already killed likely 40,000 of perhaps the strongest or most willful rebellious rebels in the country. So that's one more reason why it won't work. They're prepared for this constantly and continuously. And then there's Trump's threats over any nation. And that's also what I want to get into as well here. Because not only did President Donald Trump, of course, do this to hurt Iran and threaten Iran in an attempt to bring them back, truthfully, to the negotiating table where we've only ever seen the United States try to make demands of Iran without actually negotiating the way you would with a country that you recognize has leverage. I've explained this on this channel the entire time throughout this war. Iran has much more leverage than what the United States wants to admit. Trump, if you'll remember in the first week, was demanding unconditional surrender. That implies no negotiations, rather just giving terms and expecting them to capitulate. Iran has always believed that they have leverage, and really what we have seen now over the last 5.5 months is Iran displaying and proving that they have had this leverage the entire time. If they didn't, then truly this war would have ended in the foolish timeline that Trump gave all of you gullible MAGA cultist low IQ chuds who ate it up like goy slop because you are goyim. This war would have ended in 4 to 6 weeks like he said it would originally had Iran not had the leverage and the military capabilities. Had it been total annihilation like Trump told all of you goyim back in early March, then this wouldn't even be something I'd be discussing right now. But of course, fast forward 5.5, 6 months later, and where are we? Well, we're now at a point where Iran is now threatening military action against us. They're threatening to go on the offensive, not just the defensive. They're already threatening to cancel all negotiations, and in truth, they have. And the Strait of Hormuz is still not open. It's still not flowing. Our oil reserves are almost entirely out at this point, and all economic indicators are suggesting that this fall time might be the moment where we hit a second Great Depression, or at the very least, a recession that is without a doubt baked into our economy as it is. That's where we're at. And Trump is now threatening any nation beyond that. It's not even just Iran that he's focused on, but he has to, as a result of the nature of what a sanction is, he has to threaten every nation now that would be attempting to do business with Iran. And that's what you have to really understand what that implies, because it's not even just about Iran at that point. Like I said at the beginning of the stream so far on this episode, I alluded to this. The biggest customer of Iran is China. And if you're not careful, a lot of the goy slop consuming MAGA cultists who think that they're smart, they're just smart enough to wish they were smarter. They read up a little bit and they paint this picture and they believe that they've got it all figured out. A combination of a few QAnon Reddit posts followed by Economics 101 and, a few articles written from the Chinese economy pages. And they come into these chats and they say, this war's always been about China. Now, I've already adequately dismantled those arguments and proven how not only is it not about China, but it's actually benefiting China in every single way. So if you're not careful, you'll deal with that again, where people are saying, see, this is what it's always been about, China. No. Here's the problem with that. China will now be entering the fray. They're going to now perk up as a result of this economic war. China's been taking a backseat approach. Their strategy has been actually brilliant, China. in combination with Iran. The second this war started, Iran took themselves predominantly off the global oil markets and dipped into their large oil reserves. In fact, the largest oil reserves that any country has in the world, capable of sustaining them for about 110 days when utilized correctly. And they did this so that they wouldn't be affected economically, while right now China is coming out of what was the equivalent of our 2008 housing market crash. China economically has shifted from a real estate debt model to one of a productive model, looking towards the future to become a manufacturing and production powerhouse nation that produces everything that the rest of the world depends on. As a result of switching this model, though, the housing market crash was, in my opinion, a deliberate one by the Chinese government, by Beijing. They allowed the housing market crash to happen and refused to give bailouts to all of the large real estate-like companies and moguls in China because they want to shift their economic priorities and their economic system from a debt-based real estate land grab one to one of production and supply chains, production, etc. Because of that, though, their economy is soft, and they have to be careful, and they have to make the right moves. So China, when this war started, understood what the effect would be on the oil markets. It would be driving prices up. China doesn't want to pay those prices if they can avoid it. They've also done themselves tremendous favors by creating and sustaining the world's largest private oil reserve. They do not share this oil reserve with anyone. So understand that. They took themselves off the oil markets. They took themselves off the oil markets at the beginning of this war so that they could dip into their oil reserves and avoid paying much more of a surplus money-wise for the oil. That would hurt their economy. And they've been sitting on their private oil reserves for quite a few weeks, quite a few months, really, because their oil reserves last 110 days. Now they're, of course, coming off, and I've already discussed on a prior episode what kind of implications that will have for the global oil economy and markets, as all of the MAGA chuds again. And I say this as a conservative. I'm not a cultist. I can freely criticize conservatives, and really Trump, for that matter, for being so stupid. All of the MAGA cultists out there were saying, see, it's about China, look at that. Oh, and look at how amazing Trump is. The oil really didn't spike up. It hit 120 almost at one point, but look at how Trump has managed to keep it around $70 or $80 a barrel. I mean, that is just magnificent, the oil futures, and people just need to stop being panicans and trust Trump. You are a 98 IQ chud. Like I said, you're just smart enough to wish you were smarter. China, the reason why the oil reserves, the oil futures stayed more steady than what Trump deserved, truthfully, is because China took themselves off the oil markets. They're back on. They're coming back on. They're on. That is going to cause a massive issue with the oil futures. We're going to see that soon. We're going to see the price of oil really, really get bad when China is fully back on. But what's also important to understand when it comes to all of this is when people were also saying that Trump was selling oil, look how powerful Trump is and how smart of a play this is. Trump is now selling oil to all of these countries. They're coming under Louisiana with their ships and filling up, and we're making a profit. I pointed out at the time how stupid that was. You don't make a profit off of that. The oil executives do. You don't see a dime of that. That's not how that works, first of all. Second of all, if I remember reading right, the report was that even China bought some of that oil. And why did they do that? Not to help out America, but to also further sustain their oil reserves that they were tapped into and to be able to buy our oil at a much more fair price than what the market would have sold them. That's how much of a five-head strategist the country of China is. They've been making all of the right moves, and the goy slop consuming MAGA cultists have genuinely believed that all of this was hurting them. It isn't. It wasn't. It isn't. Now these sanctions are possibly risking actual economic pain on China. And so now the MAGA cultists can cue them back in, and they can say, see, it was always about China. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, yeah, here's the problem with that now. They're coming back on the oil markets. They've already tapped into their reserves, And they're not going to let anything stop them from coming back on the oil markets, which will, first of all, like I said, affect the price of oil, affect the oil futures markets, and drive prices up because the demand will now be depleted as a result of China coming back on as a full customer. So for all the people calling us panicans, they're about to be eating a shit sandwich when it comes to the oil markets. Just give it a few weeks. But beyond that, they're going to come on as a customer because they've tapped into their oil reserves and have depleted them. And here's the deal. I can't remember the exact number, but they are really dependent on Iran for oil. I can't remember if it's like 60% or 70%, but it is high. And if Trump is going to wage economic warfare against Iran and sanction them and sanction anybody doing business with Iran, then understand that if that's going to hurt China, and if China is desperate to protect their now softened economy as a result of them literally changing economic systems and deliberately allowing for a housing market crash back in 2020 and 2021, they're just coming out of that. They've got to play it safe. They've got to protect their economy from an objective standpoint. Obviously, as an American, I want China's economy to crumble, by the way. So don't take this as China advocacy. This is American advocates. I'm just being real with you, though. You got to be able to put yourself in the enemy's shoes and understand how they're going to play the game. So China is going to instantly seek out what leverage they have over the United States to be able to counter or deter President Donald Trump from weaponizing these sanctions against them specifically. This is the dilemma and the roadblock that President Donald Trump is going to run into by trying to impose these sanctions on Iran. It's not just the fact that Iran, not because I even want to as an American nationalist, I objectively and fairly recognize the resolve of the Iranian people who have that resolve built up over the course of decades of already being sanctioned and living through a shit economy in Iran as a result. Combine that with the religious zealous nature of them. They practice their faith. They believe in their faith. They despise America. They've just been attacked by America. We blew up a school full of children in their country. We've taken out their targets. We've blown up their bridges. We've killed some of their citizens. They want this war. The Iranians right now are united. Doesn't mean in the future they won't try to rise up, perhaps, if things got really bad. But at least right now they want this war. And even if they try to rise up later, like I said, the hardliners are in place and they'll quell the rebellions. They always do. They turn off the internet. They shoot the rebels in the streets. They make an example out of them. And then it's back to business as usual. But the China aspect is really where this plan is going to fall up short. The Strait of Hormuz won't be reopened because of increased sanction pressure, and China is going to come in and say, well, that doesn't apply to us, does it? That surely you're not talking about us, does it? And what's Trump supposed to say to that? Because China, in truth, has a lot of leverage over us. Actually, too much. Something else I advocate for on this channel. Learning to self-sustain, learning to pull away from China and self-sustain as a nation. They have too much leverage over us, though, and we can't just snap our fingers and change that tomorrow to make Trump's sanction plan against Iran work and allow Trump to sanction China. I'd love nothing more. I would love to be able to hurt China right now. We can't. We literally just can't. Think about what they have over us leverage-wise. First and foremost, I think the most obvious is rare earths, the rare earth minerals. But they also hold the manufacturing advantage over us, most of which, or a lot of which at least, we sold overseas to them in the 80s and definitely in the 90s as well, to make all of our price of living and cost of goods here even cheaper than they already were for the greedy boomers. Critical supply chains we're almost totally dependent on China for. We're just too dependent. Focusing especially, though, on the rare earth minerals, I want to just remind everybody of this. Like I've been reporting on this channel, we have depleted our high-grade munitions. We're running out of high-grade munitions. And people will come in here and they'll say, oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. We have plenty of missiles. Yeah, low-grade ones. Yeah, we have plenty of those. Those do jack shit to a country like Iran, which is a country surrounded on three sides by mountains, made of solid granite and virtually indestructible. Our high-grade munitions were barely effective enough to even put a dent in Iran as it is, and we've expended most of them. Even more importantly, we've pulled all of our THAAD systems out of the Indo-Pacific region where they really belong, protecting countries like South Korea and our other allies, possibly even Japan, really. We've moved those all to the Middle East to protect Israel predominantly, but also in some ways our Persian Gulf allies and, of course, our soldiers. Those have been depleted in many ways, too. We have burned through Patriot interceptor missiles. And what is significant about this, and me saying this, is because many of these high-grade munitions and defensive systems and munitions are dependent on rare earth minerals and rare earth magnets, of which we are dependent on China for. Not that America doesn't have hundreds of billions or trillions, perhaps, dollars worth of rare earth minerals here in this country, but our ability to both mine and, more importantly, process them and utilize them is almost non-existent. We're so far behind, we are likely 10 years behind on any of that. China has gone all in on that over the past several years. China, as a result of going all in on rare earth minerals and production and shifting their economy from a real estate debt model to a production model, is now responsible for something to the effect of 94% of all the world's rare earth mineral processing. So we actually need China to quite literally restock on all of the weapons that matter that we've burned through that we use for national security purposes. This is what people need to understand. That's the leverage. So with that leverage, what do we do then when China comes to us after Trump announces this D-Day, economic D-Day against Iran via sanctions and via sanctioning everybody who attempts to help Iran? And China comes to us and says, that doesn't apply to us, right? Right? Don't you need those rare earth magnets? Aren't you sort of dependent on us for, almost all of your manufacturing and production nowadays? Surely you're not talking about sanctioning us if we buy Iranian oil, of which we're about 60 or 70% dependent on Iran for, right? Surely we get a pass. You can sanction all those other countries, but not us, right? What does Trump then do is the question. And this is the dilemma. Because, excuse me, do we let them continue buying from Iran? If we do, what does that mean? That means that Iran gets to sell a large portion of their oil to China, and our sanction power on Iran is now cut by over 50 or 60%. The effect, the desired effect on our sanctions on Iran dwindles if we allow China to get the pass. Trump's sanction plan all of a sudden really doesn't even work all that well. But if we don't, and if we try to tell China, no, it applies to you, you better stop buying Iranian oil, as China comes off their oil reserve strategy, and truthfully, if they can have access to the Iranian oil, they will start getting desperate for it, then we're essentially waging an economic war against not just Iran, but also against China, who will then utilize the leverage they have over us, and it'll turn into economic warfare against China too. They'll start withholding rare earth minerals. They'll start withholding production. They never honor their deals as it is. This is not like people should not be caught off guard by the notion of them doing that. They did it during COVID, for instance, with medical supplies. The second there was a problem in their country, they prioritized their people and they stopped sending us all of the stuff that they vowed to and promised to based off of agreements. They'll certainly do it if it means helping out their economy and preventing economic disaster. They'll go to economic war with us, and we've seen how stubborn they are based off of Trump's tariff war with them back in 2025. So that's the problem that Trump's going to face, and that's ultimately why his economic D-Day solution is folly. It's just not going to work on any level. It won't work even if he could get Iran isolated, let alone it won't work based off of the fact that he's threatening to sanction every nation that would buy oil from Iran, which is not just China, but dozens of others too. There's just no way to do this. And don't even get me started on the fact that once again, we are seeing the very foolish model of weaponizing the US dollar, which is the global reserve currency. This never works out in America's favor in the long term. And why is that? Well, because the BRICS nations were literally formed together and joined together over the idea of sanctions and the global reserve dollar currency. They've been looking for a way to bypass it out of anger. We have screwed over Russia in the past. We've been screwing over Iran with frozen assets. We've screwed over China in the past. We have weaponized this dollar every chance we get, seemingly, as a result of our displeasure of these other countries. Really, when you're the global reserve dollar, all you have to do is play nice, sit back, and profit. But America just can't do that with the military-industrial complex and our collective. And by that, I don't mean me, because I'm not a stupid goy. I may be a goy, but I'm not a stupid goy. Our collective desire to serve Israel and utilize the military always and maintain a presence in a lot of these regions where we have no business really maintaining as large of a presence of. And every time these countries do something we don't like, we weaponize the dollar that we worked so hard to convince them to use as the global reserve currency. BRICS has been formed as a means to bypass this. They've been exploring avenues to do so. They've in the past even convinced countries in the Persian Gulf to start accepting yuan currency in exchange for oil. This situation, if Trump plays it out to its fullest, will not help that situation out at all. It will strengthen BRICS. It strengthens them virtually every time we try it. The petrodollar is already in jeopardy as a result of this war as it is in the region, let alone now weaponizing more sanctions and the global reserve currency against countries that we don't like as a result. You really couldn't even ask, in my opinion at this point, for a better Manchurian candidate than Trump. He has taken up this war and proven that not only is our U.S. military perhaps overrated in its abilities, perhaps we peaked in the 90s, perhaps we're not as big and scary as we've made ourselves out to be, but now he may wind up also exposing the fact that we're not all that economically strong either. That's the fear in all of this. This is another massive potential tactical error on Trump's part, and it really is almost as if he is trying to speed run the demise of America. It's a huge problem. It's a massive problem. And I give it about a 10 or 20 or maybe if I'm being gracious, this economic D-Day plan, 30% chance of working. It would require somewhat supernatural occurrences for this to actually work. You know, maybe China decides to play nicer. I don't know. I'm trying to even contemplate or fathom how this could work for Trump. So, I can kind of fathom it, and I'm not saying it's a guaranteed fail, but it is almost certainly a guaranteed fail. Just like the start of this Iran war was, which I said from day one would play out this way. And here we are. I've been nothing but right. So if you want to be as smart as me one day, you should be sure to like the stream right now in support of that analysis there of the Middle East region and the latest news. Double tap your phone screens or hit the thumbs up button if you're watching on the computer or tablet. It's free to do, and it does encourage YouTube's algorithm to push this show out to more people who need to see this. Also, be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed that. I go live pretty much every single night of the week, but I would also encourage you, if you enjoyed that, make sure to, I would only consider subscribing if you're aligned with me politically, in America, just to be frank with you. I am a conservative. I know it doesn't sound like it. I'm fairly and justly criticizing Trump, but I am a reactionary. I am a conservative. I'm pretty far on the right wing. And I think that's going to get exposed in the next segment here when we discuss this Lindsay Clancy trial case. I am pretty right-wing, though, so be aware. I'm just not a MAGA cultist, and it's increasingly more important than ever to just call this out for what it is. It's okay to even admit you voted for Trump. I like what Trump ran off of campaign-wise, but we can't be so thick in all of this to honestly try to trick ourselves into believing we're getting anything that he ran off of, because we're not. At best, we're getting half-assed promises fulfilled. A half-assed fulfillment on some things. Yeah, he's deporting some people. Not enough. The Epstein files, half released, half withheld. The Epstein class is still protected for a very obvious reason. No new wars. Here we are. 4 to 6 weeks, they said. I said, obviously that's not true. Here we are, about to be hitting the 6-month mark. No end in sight. No end in sight. And it's not getting better economically for the global economy or the U.S. economy. It's a disaster. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. You know, there's so much copium out there with MAGA. I've seen all of these channels say, "Oh, well, Trump's waiting to make the deep state arrest until somewhere around July or August because then they'll be more impactful for the midterms." You really fucking believe that? They arrested Don Lemon, a gay black man, for storming into it, which I agree he shouldn't have, but he stormed into a church. He stormed into a church and terrorized the children over, you know, I can't even remember what it was about now, because I remember thinking, okay, Don Lemon, you're kind of a scumbag for that, but really? This, and Pam Bondi at the time, that fat mouth bitch, she does her makeup and spends like 30 minutes on Fox News puffing up her boobs, you know, and just, oh yeah, we're not going to tolerate that Don Lemon, you don't do that here in America. We arrested Don Lemon, and you know, people are asking for the arrest. This administration is not playing around. That's what you've seen, MAGA. That's your deep state arrest for you, Don Lemon. How do you feel about that one? Over 580 days into Trump's second term, not a single deep state arrest. Not a single one. Because Don Lemon's not part of the deep state, let's be real. But that's the closest thing you got, which is what makes it even funnier. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'll always have my conservative values, but for the love of God, like, we've got to get real serious about this and call this out, this disastrous administration, for what it is. MMMM even says it. Very disappointed with President Donald Trump. Not what he ran on. No new wars. He needs to Yeah, exactly. All he had to do was run on the campaign promises he made. It was actually clearly the winning formula. He won all the swing states. He won the popular vote. He crushed in the electoral college. Every state literally voted more red in 2024. Even New York and California, those despicable blue states, they shifted more red. Trump's campaign promises were gold. And within 5 months, May 2025, I'll never forget it, it was all flushed down the toilet. It's not hard. It really isn't. But that's all I've got to say about that. We're going to move on. I want to get into the Lindsay Clancy trial case here, because this is crazy right here. This Lindsay Clancy trial case, this disturbs my soul, and it really should bother you too. We're seeing this dystopia unfold before our very eyes with these absolute fanatics coming out of the woodworks, these idiotic women, these emotional, illogical women in this sort of like, you know, cult-like psychosis, emerging to literally support a woman who murdered her children one by one, methodically and psychotically. It's been bothering me, and I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to talk about this last night, and I just didn't have the time. We're going to get into it tonight, though. It's a conversation that just needs to happen. And yeah, we're going to get into it. So again, be sure to like the stream, double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button, and subscribe. And yeah, stick around if you want to talk about this. This case is like, it's viral. The virality of this case right now is insane. It seems like everyone's paying attention to it, and moreover, it seems like a lot of people are shocked at what's going on publicly here in America when it comes to the women, predominantly, of course, white women. The murder trial of Lindsay Clancy, it is centered around this incident that took place in Duxbury, Massachusetts, January 24th, 2023. For somehow anybody who may not know about this, Lindsay Clancy, who, by the way, is like a child delivery room nurse. That's her career. Child delivery room nurse, Lindsay Clancy, mother of 3 at the time and wife at the time to Patrick Clancy, wound up murdering all 3 of her children slowly and methodically in the basement of her home. She reportedly waited or even had her husband Patrick Clancy leave the home and go pick up children's medication at a local CVS store, as well as then stop and pick up takeout food at a local restaurant, where after he left, she wound up locking the front door to the house, along with several other doors in the house, I believe her bedroom being one of them. And she then took her 3 children, who at the time, and I guess will always be, aged 3, 5, and then 8 months old. And she took them into the basement. Where she, one by one, strangled them to death slowly with an exercise band. After that, she then proceeded to go up to the second floor of her home, slit her wrist deeply, slit her throat, and then jump out of the second-story window headfirst, where she hit the pavement and ultimately somehow did not manage to kill herself, instead only crippling herself. Sadly, after this, of course, Patrick Clancy winds up returning home eventually with the food, the medicine, etc., and he returns home to what he now describes as an unusually quiet house. He winds up, of course, going upstairs to look. He gets suspicious. He searches the house. I think, if I remember this right, I'm trying to remember all the information. The trial is enormous. It's been going on for days. But he winds up realizing that the bedroom door was locked, and he begins to panic. He eventually winds up stumbling outside of the house, where he spots his wife laying on the freezing cold ground outside with her wrist slit that he noticed, and bleeding still, and also noticing what he describes as a red line around her neck, which he of course later realized was another attempt for her to make a slit. He immediately winds up dialing 911 at that point in time, according to what I've followed so far. And in addition to that, he winds up asking her where the children are. Now, the reason why I'm saying this too is because in the case, apparently, one of the people who has had the privilege of sitting in the courtroom, and I guess I shouldn't even say privilege, has even said that she heard on the 911 call that Lindsay Clancy was still alive and able to verbally communicate, though barely. And she responds to his question on the phone of where the children are by barely being able to mumble out basement. So he immediately re-enters the house and goes into the basement, where he then sadly finds that all three of his children are dead. Now, Lindsay Clancy, the discussion centered around this case has been centered around the idea that Lindsay Clancy is suffering from a series of mental issues and conditions. People talking obviously about postpartum depression, and they're insisting that at the time of her doing this atrocious act, she was in a postpartum psychosis state. Despite all of that, though, she does freely admit that she killed her children, and even goes on to say she did so because a voice in her head told her to. She then, of course, did try to kill herself. This is very obvious, and she doesn't deny any of this. She admits all of it. So it should be a cut and dry case. She did it, she admits it, and what follows should be the death penalty. She should be surely put to death. But that's not good enough, apparently, for women in America. Because despite the fact that the trial itself right now isn't even about disproving her guilt or trying to prove the guilt of Patrick Clancy or anybody else, despite the fact that she admits it, the case is not about it, women have decided to storm social media and weigh in with their worthless opinions on all of it. And what I've been noticing as I've been browsing and scouring at this point through social media posts and watching all of these insufferable dumb bimbos take to social media and essentially put out their conspiracy theories or their relatable content to her, whatever, these women can be broken up into three typical female camps formed online over this Lindsay Clancy case. You first and foremost have what is emerging as the now true crime podcast listening super sleuth camp of female detectives who are showing up on TikTok from their places of work or in their living room on the couch or in their beds or in their bathrooms, basically showing off their deductive reasoning skills centered around what they perceive to be the possible reality of the circumstance, citing loosely and sometimes even inaccurately the facts that have been discussed in the Lindsay Clancy trial. You also have in another camp women who are posting this content that is made to suggest that they're affected by what Lindsay Clancy was. It's essentially the please pay attention to me too. Wow, look at all the attention Lindsay Clancy got for killing her children. I've thought about killing my children. Do I get attention now? That's kind of the content that they're posting. You'll see this. They're holding. I'm going to show you content of this too. This segment of American Advocates will be discussing the issues of feminism and women destroying America. That's really what this is about. So I'll be showing you in just a couple minutes here and progressively throughout the course of this segment All of this. I've got the videos, some videos of women discussing conspiracy theories and in a true crime sense, what they believe happened. I've got videos of women holding their baby with recordings of Lindsay Clancy or her lawyer reading off her quoted statements, holding their baby and putting on quite the waterworks display saying, "Me too, Lindsay, me too, yeah." Yeah, that's the other camp of women. It's the I relate to Lindsay. I suffer from postpartum depression. Do I get an audience now? I've thought about killing my baby too, and I've only been one step away from it. Focus on me too, please. That's the other encampment. And the third camp that I said exists is really just a mix of both. Because at this point, I do believe there's a mix of both camps. Women who relate to Lindsay, as well as simultaneously believing that Patrick is the killer and are becoming super sleuth, deductive reasoning, conspiracy theorists. So that's what's going on now. Now, starting with the conspiracy theory camp, that hurts my brain. This is again the kind of content that just it makes your mind numb, and it in some ways reminds you of something or of somebody who also recently has been in the news. And funny enough, has also weighed in on this. We'll get into her in a second too. But the conspiracy theory camp basically represents what, in my opinion, is the ultimate female nature on display of them dodging accountability by any means necessary. Always looking for a way to, of course, blame a man. And this is just what women do. I truly wish that Kevin Samuels-like figures were actually still alive. Rest in peace to him, because he would have a field day with this. Though his channel at the time was predominantly centered around dealing with the vile nature of unsubmissive black women, he was no stranger to calling out white women when needed, and I was more than willing to welcome him doing so. And he, at one point, even said something that I still use as a quote to this day. The modern women, have deflection shields that are stronger and better than that of the Star Trek Enterprise. Everything bounces off of them to anywhere else but to them. The accountability issue of modern women is a massive problem. They are internal narcissists. They're all about themselves. They're more selfish than ever. They're despicable, truthfully. And they have been taught in this postmodern, fourth wave feminist society that it's always a man's fault. And so in many ways, that, in my opinion, is the root cause of these conspiracy theorist women out here. Because what they're doing in creating these conspiracy theories is looking to blame a man. And that man would be Patrick Clancy, the unfortunate former husband of Lindsay Clancy, who's also the father of the 3 children that she murdered one by one methodically in the basement by strangulation after sending him out to get their medication and food. Just understand what's happening. Like, this is how disgusting modern women are. They're all taking to the public right now to blame the victim. He's the only victim left alive. And now he's the one who somehow is at fault for this in some of the minds of some of these delusional, low IQ bitches. And I want to actually go over something here. They're not just blaming him and accusing him of killing the kids, possibly. We'll get to that in a second. But some of the more softer forms of criticism against Patrick Clancy also don't hold up and bother me as well. Because again, it just also points to the issue with modern women, their expectations, how they're taught when it comes to how they view men or what the expectations of them should be in society as compared to men. And so even if it is a big if, because a lot of them are blaming Patrick and accusing him of murder, falsely so, and they should be probably sued into oblivion, by the way. But even if they're not, what many women have taken to doing is blaming Patrick Clancy for not supporting Lindsay enough. They say, well, Patrick Clancy really is at fault for this because as a husband, he should have supported his wife more. And clearly, she was in a poor mental state, poor mental conditions, and she just wasn't receiving enough support from those around her, especially her husband, they say. Here's what Patrick Clancy wound up doing for Lindsey Graham, though, throughout the course of their marriage and throughout the course of them raising these 3 children together. First of all, he predominantly provided her with a large house in a good neighborhood. If I remember correctly, he worked for Microsoft as a tech guy making $300,000 a year. Even in this economy, that kind of salary is more than enough to support a family off of and allow for a situation where the wife doesn't have to work. It doesn't need to be a two-income household. $300,000 is good money pretty much anywhere, even in Massachusetts. So he largely, predominantly, provided her with a very good house in a great neighborhood. He then gave her 3 kids. And here's where it gets interesting. Here's where we acknowledge all of the work that the man put into all of this, despite the fact that many women online will insist otherwise and say he was a neglectful husband. For every child that was born, Patrick Clancy wound up taking his optional paternity leave from work to be with the newborns and, more importantly, to support Lindsay, who he acknowledged was struggling after each pregnancy and birth. In one case, he even actually extended his paternity leave for one child for a full 12 weeks, recognizing, of course, that his wife was struggling more in that particular instance with issues like postpartum depression, etc. In addition to all of this, to ease her burden at home, he paid for a nanny that they wound up keeping employed for something to the effect of 5 years. He also created a separate bank account and filled it up with, of course, his money that was able to be accessed by Lindsay Clancy in the event that she felt like she needed to stay at home more or spend more time with the kids. He also wound up getting her a therapist, in fact, multiple therapists throughout the course of all of this. He checked up on her constantly to make sure she was okay, calling her often throughout the day, and even offering to help her find medical professionals to address her issues and perverse thoughts. And in addition to all of that, like many of the now what I would refer to as straight up, basically borderline gay and cucked married men that we see in America. Because we're at a point right now where, as a man, the fastest way to lose your masculine edge, the fastest way to be humiliated as a man, to be cucked, to literally appear gay, is to get married to a modern woman. And that's just the reality in America. And just like that, Patrick Clancy even agreed at multiple points in time to sleep down in the basement as far away as possible from Lindsay at her request in his own home. These are the lengths that Patrick Clancy went to support his wife, to cater to his wife, and in doing so, hope that his children would be raised well in a large home in a good neighborhood that he predominantly provided for and paid for, etc. He, on paper, literally, there was nothing more he could have done. But with modern women, nothing is ever good enough. And it really is a stark and eye-opening reminder to all men currently, in whether they be in their teenage years and beginning to really, obviously look at women, date women, etc., or in their 20s or in their 30s, or really even in their 40s at this point in the modern timeline. It's a stark reminder that you're not actually supposed to take on this role as a man when it comes to a woman. You're not supposed to marry or cater to a project wife. Life is not actually about women. That is not a man's job. Your task as a man is given to you by God. It is the most important thing in your life. Whatever God assigns you to do down here on earth takes full priority. It's more important to you than you are. It's more important. Your task by God assigned to you is more important than you yourself, your wife, or even your kids. It literally comes first. And this is what a lot of men have lost sight on. A lot of men have lost sight on this, and really they've lost sight on the fact that this is how it's supposed to be. God runs through the man. The man is the head of the household. He is both the umbrella for his family, and he loves his family like the church. He more directly is associated with God for that reason when it comes to fulfilling his earthly purpose. And in doing all of that, he then subsequently serves his family. But people, men especially, have lost sight of this. They marry these atrocious, mentally unstable women, and they become a catering butler to them. They become a submissive, subservient slave in their own home to their own wife, who they then cater to the needs of infinitely. And it never makes the situation better. The woman becomes progressively more of a monster always, not less. There is no making a woman happy because happiness is fleeting. And men, in doing this, lose sight of what their ultimate purpose on earth is, which is to not serve their wife or glorify their wife. It's to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Their purpose should be coming first. And your wife, and this is where also people lose sight on this, your wife is not here to be catered to or worshipped or focused on. Your wife is here as your assistant. Your wife is here to be your helpmeet. She is here to acknowledge the fact that you are in charge, you are the leader, and God has given you a task to carry out in the world. You are the umbrella to your family, both from God's wrath and judgment by protecting your family from that by serving God. And you're also, as a man, your umbrella to your household from the evil, harsh world. The man goes out and bears the brunt of the world, fulfilling his task by God. And his wife is at home where she belongs, serving him and seeking to make his life easier. So men need to wake up and understand this. These project women that are filled with 40 tattoos, that have hideous tattooed faces and piercings all over, they've got the bull ring in their nose, straight up informing you basically that they're a bull. They're a bull. They dye their hair colors the same colors you find on a poisonous dart frog, informing you that they're poisonous. The bull ring informing you that they're domineering bitches. The tattoos informing you that they're a mental chaotic mess. And these men, many men out there, choose that. And in doing so, you give up your purpose and your life. You want to know why midlife crises happen? It happens because of women like that, you choosing women like that. That's the stark reminder in all of this. This Patrick Clancy went out of his way to cater to all of her needs, going so far as to, allegedly at least, sleep in the basement at her request. You can't cuck yourself any more than that. And yet how was he rewarded for this? She killed his children, all 3 of them, strangled them. That's the thing. You can't serve God correctly if you're too busy serving your wife. And your service to God is supposed to be what benefits and indirectly serves your wife, as a result, everything else. If not, your purpose is ruined and you never come out better for it. Patrick Clancy is not better off for having catered to his wife and focused on this. He's worse. Everything about his life is worse. He lost his offspring, all 3 of them, from the very wife that he chose to prioritize and serve, because that is the backward system, and that's what he fell victim to. Don't take on these project women, because life is not about that. But beyond the fact that women are insisting that Patrick is at fault for not doing enough, I want to get into the other facet of all of this that really is bothersome too, and that is that women are insisting, some at least, that Patrick is actually the killer, not Lindsay. And these low IQ, retard couch detective women out here have answers for everything, including subject matters like a phone call that took place at CVS, or a change of clothing that they're insisting took place to prove that he was suspicious, or even the long time that he spent away from home throughout the course of Lindsay murdering her children, or the fact that he didn't try to render aid to his wife, who was freezing and bleeding outside after she told him, of course, that his kids were in the basement. Or, the fact that his fingerprints were on the workout resistance bands that were used to strangle his children. Or the fact that Lindsay jumped out of her window, etc. All of the lowest dumb IQ takes possible have been expressed by these true crime podcast listening, couch rotting, low IQ, female super sleuth deductive reasoning detectives. It's enough. It really is enough. And I've got some to show. I've got some clips to show you of this, just because we need to show this. So, first of all, this one right here. This clip right here. I saw this was being reacted to already. This clip right here even features, hang on, let me make sure that's on. Not that I'm going to actually play this one with volume. This clip right here features video footage of Patrick Clancy walking into the CVS store that he was sent to by his wife to pick up medication for his child. And so he goes to the CVS store, he picks up medication, and allegedly there's or on the cameras, it's not even alleged, on the cameras, he makes a phone call. And these super sleuths out here, are insistent that somehow this phone call that takes place at CVS implies that he's the mastermind behind the murders of his children. He's the orchestrator because he made a phone call at CVS. That's first of all. I want to destroy that. I want to destroy that myth right now, because the phone call record, the nature of the conversation that took place, we know the timeline of events now based off of the more recent days of the Lindsay Clancy trial. Here's how this goes. She sends him away to CVS to pick up medicine and then stop at a local restaurant to pick up takeout food for dinner. After he leaves, she locks the doors of the house. She locks some of the doors in the house. I think her bedroom door was one of them eventually after she jumped out the window. But she locks the doors of the house. She then rounds up her children, the 3-year-old, the 5-year-old, and the 8-month-old. She takes them down into the basement, and she proceeds to, one by one, while the others are watching, strangle them all to death with a workout band. She then slits her wrists in her throat and locks the door to the bedroom and jumps out of the window and falls headfirst onto the concrete, trying to kill herself. She fails. She cripples herself and lives, doesn't bleed out. Here's how the timeline works. While she was somewhere in between locking the doors and probably rounding up the children or even probably killing them, Patrick Clancy had attempted to call Lindsay Clancy at CVS. We believe, if I remember right, it's because he was attempting to ask a question about what medicine he should pick up for the child that she was actively strangling to death, probably. So he makes the phone call in CVS. He calls her. She doesn't pick up, of course. She's busy killing his kids. So he doesn't get an answer. He finds it unusual. She probably knows that this is going to be received that way. And we know based off of the call records, based off of her phone call records, if I'm remembering this right, this is a lot to remember, but this is the timeline. She calls him back. And at this point, it's almost certain that this phone call took place after she strangles all 3 children. She calls him back and has a normal conversation with him. And then they hang up the phone, and she slits her wrist in her throat and jumps out the window and locks the bedroom door. That's how this plays out. It's not him in the middle of a CVS store calling somebody on the phone to orchestrate the murders in a public place in a CVS store. Nor is it him calling in the middle of a CVS store to check up on the progress of anything or any other crackpot conspiracy theory that these women could come up with. We now know that that is the nature of the phone call. And by the way, I will continue to stress this more throughout the course of this episode. This case is not about proving she didn't kill them. She freely admits that she did. She admits to even remembering that she did. This case is about desperately trying to grab hold of an insanity plea so that she won't either be put to death or serve life in prison. So it's not even contested. None of it. None of it's contested. But beyond that, then there's the change of clothing. Take a look at this. So the super sleuths were at it again, and they said, well, look at this. Would you look at this, they said. Hang on, I'm going to click on this. Kid you not. They said that he switched his clothing. This is him at the CVS store, right? Let me make sure this is good on the vertical. This is Patrick Clancy walking into the CVS store to pick up the medicine. You see he's got some brown-looking shoes on, some jeans, and a black jacket. This is him on security camera in the restaurant. And they said, well, these deductive reasoning, true crime podcast, average IQ women. They look at this and they say, well, would you look at that? It looks like he changed his clothing. And we all know that murderers always change their clothing if they're smart after murdering. That's their conclusion. I'm going to show you it again real fast. The obvious answer to this. He didn't change his clothing. The lighting is different. This is a CVS drugstore. The lights are unbearably bright, always. You ever been in a drugstore? They're bright. This is a local restaurant. The lights are dim and different to set a different mood, one of relaxation and comfort. The lighting changed the composition of the image. He's wearing the same clothing. He's wearing the same shoes. They just are brighter because of the lighting. But this is what we're dealing with in the online community when it comes to these detectives and these true crime podcast women, these wine moms who take a nap at 2 p.m. and wake up at 3 p.m. and watch a few moments of the trial and then record themselves on TikTok saying, well, look at that. Oh, would you look at that? They also went on, like I said, to say and point out that he took a long time away from home. They said, why take so long when you know your wife has mental issues? Gee, I don't know. Have you ever been around somebody who's a mentally insufferable bitch? Have you ever been around somebody who suffers from anxiety and treats you as the punching bag, or takes it out on you, or demands everything of you and turns into an utmost energy vampire that drains you day and night constantly for years on end? Do you know what this is? Do you know what this is when a man goes to the drugstore to pick up medicine and the restaurant to pick up food? That's a vacation when you're married to a woman like Lindsay Clancy, who literally has postpartum depression and slipped into a postpartum psychosis and has been a mental drain on you for years. Forces you to sleep in the basement in your own home. That's a vacation. I'll just be honest with you. Every man will inherently understand this, even if they haven't lived it. If you're in that circumstance, you're not eager to get back home in a timely manner. You're going to take your time. You're going to make a phone call. Do I have the right medicine? Oh, let's see what else they have in the other aisles. That candy in aisle 2 at CVS looks tasty. Maybe I'll buy some Reese's cups too. Oh, would you look at that? They got a nice tasting pop there. Oh, that's nice. I don't go to CVS. Let's see what else they've got. And then you're driving to the restaurant. Well, if there's a short way and a long way, you're taking the long way. Because what's at home waiting for you is an energy vampire of a wife who's a project wife who gives you nothing but grief and is a burden. I don't care if this offends people. This is just how it is. That's the truth. Why did he take so long? Because he wasn't eager to get back home. That's why. Okay? Beyond that, they also talk about how his fingerprints were on the workout resistance bands. They literally said, oh, well, that proves it. Yeah. He literally says, I saw my wife after she was on the ground freezing to death and bleeding out on the concrete. I said, where are the children? They're in the basement. I run down into the basement and I unwrap the workout band from around my child's neck. Yeah, that'll put your fingerprints on it. And it just gets worse. And really, I want to show this clip too. This is a whole ass video. This is what first of all, this is what they look like. Smug as ever. Smug as ever, confident in their non-existing capability of deducing all of this. This woman at work breaking down the court case. This is what we're dealing with. This is the true crime podcast viewing average medium or average IQ woman thinking that they have the whole case figured out from watching it on TV, despite the fact that the case is not about who did it. Just take a listen.
All right, I got a theory. Hang with me. If your children were downstairs in a 2-story house and you were upstairs on the 2nd story, and there was a fire in your home of which prevented you from being able to exit your bedroom door, go down the stairs, and get the children, and you had no other choice and you were completely stuck on that 2nd floor in your bedroom, would you or would you not try to jump out the window to go save those kids? Because that's the only way to get down there to them, right? Fight or flight kicks in, you're gonna get out that window, right? What if Mr. Pat decided to drug her earlier in the evening, we'll say 4:30, by 5 o'clock she started getting drowsy. He tells her, go upstairs, go take a rest. When she gets upstairs, she finally passes out, lays in the bed. A few minutes later, he comes upstairs. She looks knocked out. At that point, he injures her on the wrists and on the neck. He thinks she's dead, probably because of all the blood loss. A person who's not a nurse sees that much blood, guess what? They are either getting faint, queasy. He thinks she's done for. So he leaves, barricades the door, goes and does what he does, kills those kids, goes on his little excursions to make it look like he did not do anything. When he comes back, wrench thrown in his whole scheme because she jumped out that window. It would explain the hands outside of the window, because when she woke up, whether or not she was drowsy, drugged, bloody, or whatever, she remembers in her head that he threatened that he was going to kill those kids in that basement. He told her the whole plan, because that's what a narcissist does. He wants to see the pain in her eyes, the fear in her eyes, to initiate this response. So while he thought that she was dying upstairs, to his surprise, he comes home and she had actually made it out the window, ruining his whole entire plan. But I think it did start with some type of situation up there where she was blocked in that room and she had no other choice but to try to get out. He moves the bed when he gets back, moves all the things around, maybe even cleans up the sheets on the bed. Has his handprints all over it. Literally, that's all.
This is not going to go away as a problem. I don't know where to start with the idiocy. None of the timeline backs that at all. Lindsay Clancy isn't arguing this in court at all. Any attorney worth their salt in Massachusetts, which, by the way, Lindsay Clancy has the best attorneys, one of the best attorneys in Massachusetts representing her, would, if by any means possible, they would argue this if they could. Any attorney representing their client, if they thought there was a chance that they could prove that it wasn't Lindsay in the murder, and if Lindsay herself wasn't admitting to it, which is foundational to it, they would run with any narrative they could to avoid prosecution of her, to avoid her just having to admit guilt or be found guilty. They would run with the husband did it line if they thought they could, if Lindsay didn't admit to it, first of all. But if the evidence even suggested it, they'd try. That's not what they're doing, and I can't emphasize that enough, first of all. But what's important to hone in on here is not the case. The case is as cut and dry as everybody at first glance would think it is. I'm emphasizing the psychosis state of not Lindsay Clancy, but of all of the women in America, or at least a lot or most of them who are sucked in by true crime genre television shows and podcasts and now believe that they're going to be the next Candace Owens. Because that's the problem. This is what it looks like to have a Candace Owens wine mom culture breaking out in America of women who think they're smarter than they are and are belong truly in the limelight as the next great detective from the couch. This is like the female equivalent of armchair quarterbacking now. She says that she fabricates this entire scenario. One notion dispels her entire thought process, by the way. If Patrick Clancy wanted to, in some unthinkable world, murder his children and then frame his wife by killing her and staging it as a suicide, why would he call the police when his wife was clearly still not only just alive, but conscious on the ground? He called the police when he discovered his wife on the ground. She can be heard in the call saying the basement, the children are in the basement. She can be heard. Why would he have done that? The slits are on her wrist, they're across her throat, and she's on the ground, crippled. Why would he leave her alive when very clearly she was talking in front of him? That's all you have to ask. But see, that's the problem with women. There's no logic. There's literally no logic in any of these women. It's all just emotions. And it's emotions that are fueled around the idea that the man has to be at fault always. Either he didn't do his best to provide and comfort and care for Lindsay Clancy in her clearly depressed state. All of her problems are Patrick's and he just didn't deal with them appropriately. Or, no, actually, Patrick is a sinister secret murderer who orchestrated all of this, and now Lindsay is for some reason, willing fall guy wife who might be put to death over it, and has, despite that, admitted to the guilt of it. But it has to be Patrick, they say. This is what Candace Owens conspiracy culture, low IQ kindergarten conspiracies get you. And funny enough, surprise, surprise, look who's weighed in on the Lindsay Clancy case. Well. Candace. What does Candace Owens have to say about all of this, I wonder? Let's take a listen.
I made my thoughts clear on this the moment that she was arrested, the moment that it made the news. Lindsay Clancy is obviously not guilty. There are a fleet of doctors who should be imprisoned for what they put her on. I regularly speak out against Big Pharma. They get away with murder all the time. And in this case, they are getting away with the murder of really her 3 children, but also completely destroyed her life. Lindsay Clancy, in my opinion, is not guilty. She was put into an intentional psychosis when she probably just needed to give her kids away for a weekend to get better, but they constantly give you these drugs that do not make things better.
Well. Candace Owens says that Lindsay Clancy is not guilty, and she blames the doctors for the medication they prescribed. And if you give Candace enough time, she'll find a way to blame the Macrons over in France, because you see, Brigitte Macron is actually secretly a man who's married to her husband, President Macron of France. And because Brigitte's actually secretly a man, they have this agenda that they're now coordinating to self-sabotage France, and they're in talks with Israel, who of course want to self-sabotage all of Europe. And so France and Israel have teamed together, and they're using the Utah time zone that can be found in Egypt, where they launch these fighter jets from. And from Egypt, under Utah time, with France and Israel coordinating, they actually sent these doctors over on jets following Utah time to Massachusetts, where the Clancy family resides. And the doctors, once landing, went into her house and drugged Lindsay Clancy up on drugs. And in doing so, put her in an intentional psychosis where she then murdered her 3 children while her husband was away. If you give Candace Owens enough time, that's probably the conclusion she's going to come to. And remember, she has a legal right to say it, and she's just asking questions. Do you see the problem with this kind of nonsense, this kind of base level IQ or even lower kind of kindergarten conspiracy theory culture breaking out? Do you see the issue? Because I'm infinitely smarter than Candace, my IQ is probably double hers. I can just weave that together and write fiction in the moment, in the blink of an eye. I don't have to script that ahead of time. I can just come up with anything. That's what Candace does. And that's what all of her viewers watch and wait for. And now they think they're seeing conspiracy theories everywhere. In some ways, life was actually better when Alex Jones was a part of subculture that was almost shunned by the normies. You believe that? You believe in the 9/11? You believe the Jews did 9/11? That's outrageous, they used to say. It was actually better in some ways when that was the norm. I've said before, my uncle was an OG noticer, and I remember growing up not fully understanding why he'd argue with everybody about politics and why even other Republicans got my uncle was kind of a conservative, but other Republicans got mad at him. And I remember being a kid and understanding that, and I remember thinking, why does that happen? Why do so many Republicans get mad at my uncle? I thought they believe in the same values. Now I'm old enough to understand, obviously, because he was infinitely smarter than the rest of the Goyim. And he actually knew what was going on, my uncle. He would talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs, JFK, what Reagan did and didn't do, etc. And that was the problem. He was just smarter. But back then, people who had to figure out conspiracy theories for themselves, they didn't have the internet. They had to do the research. They had to read books that were oftentimes banned or hard to find. So they were infinitely smarter than the rest. And back then, the dumb people, they never even tried. But because we're living in this age of information now where these shows just are wildly successful and you can write fan fiction slop in the blink of an eye. I could just put that out right now. I'm going to clip that later and probably just put that out. That's the new theory. France and Israel are responsible for this death. That's the new theory. Give Candace Owens 3 months. That's the theory. And because she hates TPUSA, it will be woven into the whole Charlie Kirk thing too. It's not hard to write fan fiction. It is hard to deduce the actual truth. And I don't even claim to be the smartest on that. I have so much to learn. And my biggest fear, truthfully, on this channel is actually getting stuff wrong when it comes to that realm, because I don't want to ruin the credibility of anything real. But people like Candace Owens don't care. And because they don't care, they write this overly sensational bullshit that people buy hook, line, and sinker. And it's savory. And she produces it in a way that it becomes an episodic television show of 2026. A soap opera that the wine moms can't get enough of. And when they're not watching Candace, they're watching true crime podcasts. They're listening to them. They're watching the TV shows. They're addicted to the darkness of the world, women are. And they love the murder stuff. They fall asleep to serial killer documentaries. And when you combine this fanatical kindergarten conspiracy level of thinking with an insatiable appetite for murder mysteries and true crime nonsense, the true crime genre, you're seeing an epidemic now of women who think they're smarter than they are, taking to social media and destroying stuff. Destroying everything, not just Charlie Kirk's legacy and any work that TPUSA did that was actually good, but now just the lives possibly of average ordinary men like Patrick Clancy, who by all means seems to have been not just a good husband, but an above and beyond husband. How many husbands make $300,000 a year and can buy a house like that and have 3 kids and create a separate fucking bank account and put their own money in it so that their wife can stay at home and not have to go back to work as a nurse, as a child delivery nurse, by the way? How many husbands would sleep in the basement at their wife's request? How many husbands would hire and fire multiple therapists in pursuit of trying to help their wife out or seek out the best medical aid possible for their wives and Medicare professionals? How many husbands would hire a nanny for, or even could hire a nanny for 5 years to help ease the burden of their wife? How many husbands would go to the CVS drugstore after a long day at work, pick up medication for their children, and then go to a restaurant to pick up takeout for their wives and bring it back, only to find their children dead? But this is where we're at. These women, women hate men more than ever, and when they're not hating on men, they're single because they hate men. They have all the time in the world to couch rot, and they fill their mind with Candace Owens' kindergarten conspiracy junk and true crime podcast darkness. And they combine these two into the most disgusting form possible. That's what's setting me off in all of this. And it doesn't even get better from here. It doesn't even get better from here, because really, all of this is even a bigger sign of how feminism is truly the biggest problem in America. And it's a stark reminder to me on this channel, even when I advocate for Christian nationalism. I'll get to that a little bit later, but I'm going to just even spoil it somewhat now. There's a third word, actually. This whole incident has reminded me that no, actually, Christian nationalism is too broad and general of a term. We've got to add something distinct to it. I'll get to that later. But the biggest problem in this country truly is feminism. Women have not changed at all over the several thousand years that they've been recorded and written about, or observed even. So it's no surprise that women, of course, in addition to some of them taking to social media like I just showed you to outright accuse Patrick of murdering his children and trying to murder his wife and failing for some reason, but despite that calling 911 anyway, or women taking to social media to essentially blame Patrick for not providing enough care to his wife, even though Lindsay Clancy freely admits that he did all of these things for her and that she murdered her children and tried to kill herself and failed. Even though there's all of that in place, and even though, of course, some women are taking to social media, by the way, they're taking to social media and they're literally relating to Lindsay Clancy. That's what also disturbs me. That's what I also want to show you here. It doesn't just end with the crackpot conspiracy theorist women. That's bad enough. They're slandering a good name in Patrick Clancy, the man who lost his children. And they're in some ways accusing him of murder or of being a negligent husband. That's bad enough. Women are also taking to social media, like I said earlier, and they're posting these ridiculous TikToks and Instagrams about how they relate to Lindsay Clancy. They're posting on here that they admit that they too perhaps have felt like murdering their children, or we were just one step away from possibly murdering our children because of postpartum mental state issues. This is what they're posting. I'm about to show you this. And you know what's funny? I'm going to even point this out. The logical inconsistency collectively of women is apparent even in that. It can't be Lindsay Clancy, they say. Patrick must be the murderer. They'll say that, and then the next day, they'll post a TikTok reel of them holding their newborn, saying, "Me too, Lindsay. Me too. I'm only one step away from doing it. I might just murder my child," they say. So it's like, wait a minute. So you're saying that what Lindsay Clancy did is so relatable that you now want to support her for murdering her children, but she definitely couldn't have murdered? Which one is it? Which one is it? modern Western woman. Did Patrick Clancy do it? No way Lindsay did it? Or did Lindsay do it, but oh my gosh, is it so relatable? It's astonishing. It really is astonishing. But here's some of the clips of that because, yeah, they're pretty disturbing as well. And you need to see this. People need to just see this. And they just need to accept that this is where we're at as a society. This is like the medicine no one wants to take, and I'm going to deliver it to you anyway. So, here's what we're dealing with. Take a look at this. There's the caption for you. Same, Lindsay. Same. And she's holding a newborn sleeping child, or a very young sleeping child. Yeah, just look at this.
They're on into her travels. I am completely overwhelmed trying to take care of the kids. I'm drowning every day. I feel guilty that I'm spending my family's money and not making any. I feel like I spend way too much. She wrote that, right?
Correct.
I'm terrified of Callan getting sick. He's a sick baby. A sick baby is miserable. He's sick now with a double ear infection. Clearly has a bellyache. It's miserable. I feel like the other kids are going to get him sick all winter long. She wrote that, right?
Correct.
I always feel strongly against sleep training. I feel like it's abusive to let the baby cry and not respond, but I made the decision. I did it with Cal. It is way too much crying. It's incredibly stressful. She wrote that, right?
Correct.
He's okay. He will be okay. It's not harmful in any way. The doctor said it was okay. Plenty of people sleep train their kids at that age. It's necessary as a third child, is what she wrote, right?
Correct.
I feel incredibly sad and guilty about not breastfeeding anymore. That was the one thing I could do to help his immune system, and I can tell he really doesn't like the formula. I'm very sad about this. I know at this time it's what I needed to do for my mental health. She wrote that, right?
I want you to just, when you're watching some of these clips, I want you to just really understand the performative nature that is required of these women to put those kind of clips out there. Just understand for a second what all of that entails. These are not candid moments being caught by a third party somewhere. People tend to forget that when they're watching bullshit like that through the lens of a camera, through a video posted online. Understand what goes into that. A woman has to wake up that day, and at some point in time, a thought has to be conceived that she might want to put out a video featuring that kind of nonsense. From there, she then has to, in her mind, plan out how it should look, what she should do, and then she has to take her phone and mount it somewhere and turn on one of the apps, click on one of her apps, and click record. She then has to grab her baby, start cradling it, while looking at the camera, and then progressively get herself worked up into crying. And she has to do this for a while until she feels like she's got a good enough of a take. From there, presumably she puts the baby down, grabs the phone that's on record, turns off record. She then spends time editing the video to make sure that she both looks good still and that it's an impactful, or what she thinks will be an impactful video. And then she has to then post it and write a caption for it, and everything else. And in the process of doing all of that, she somehow concludes from the start all the way through the finish that it's a good idea, it makes her look good, and it's exactly the kind of content that she wants to put out into the world. Without obviously thinking about any secondary or tertiary consequences for those actions. Things like that baby growing up 18 years from now and being in high school, and his idiotic bimbo mother had posted a video about him when he was a baby where she's trying to insinuate basically that her life is worse for having had him. Her life is miserable because of him. She's crying because of him. She just doesn't want the baby. And she relates with a woman who at that time murdered all 3 of her children. I just want people to understand that. Because again, this is not a candid moment. And There's a very real saying that is oftentimes expressed by people who truly understand female psychology. True tears shed by a woman are never done in public or in front of anybody. A woman's tears are never genuine if they're being done in front of you. They're always performative. When a woman really wants to cry, she runs away and she cries in a closet somewhere. A lot of men don't understand that. It gets even worse than this too, because from here, we then have the women that are pissing me off even more in regards to all of this. There are women that apparently have so much free time that they have now taken to appearing outside of the courtroom in the hundreds, numbering in the hundreds now. They're all wearing pink. They're supporting Lindsay Clancy. They're even waving to her and greeting her as she drives up the pathway to enter the courtroom. In fact, they've even seemed to now form a cult-like following over Lindsay Clancy now as well. Take a look at this. Murder 3 of your children, and you too could be greeted like a hero as you arrive at court to be put on trial for murdering your children. Murder 3 of your children, and you too could draw a massive crowd of women wearing all pink, bringing in some cases their own children to the courthouse where a trial is being undergone over a woman who murdered her children. These women are bringing their children to this, holding up their little heart symbols in the shape of their hands in solidarity. Murder your own children, and you too could have a cult formed in your honor of women taking to social media and in person outside the courthouse to celebrate you.
Everyday therapist, mother, maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, lift to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. All day, everyday therapist, mother, maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, lift to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7, baby.
Isn't that lovely? That's a nurse there at the end, it looks like, too. Another nurse, another female nurse in the medical industry who is supporting a 3-time serial killer. Because that's what Lindsay is. She's a serial killer. She killed three beings in a row, and they were all children. And the women are all celebrating it. Of course, these women also aren't smart when they're actually interviewed, so I found this to be fascinating, too. This is actually an interview of some of the women outside the courthouse and what they had to say. I'm sure you don't want to take a listen, but I had to listen to it, so you're going to be forced to listen to at least some of it as well. So shut the fuck up and take a listen.
You know, one of my sister-in-laws, it could be one of my best friends, and it could be me. So just here to support.
We are hearing her. We see that she tried everything. And I really do believe that she went into a state of psychosis.
I feel like the system failed her. She was begging for help and no one was there. I don't know if us being here will make her feel any better, but I mean, she's living in hell right now.
She feels like the system failed her. And it did. And that's really the messaging that I want to get behind on for tonight's episode and this particular segment of Lindsay Clancy. Because yes, in fact, the system did fail her. The system failed Lindsay Clancy not because it didn't try to solve her problems and not because it didn't do its best based off of what it has. It's a pharmaceutical system. There are no good answers for somebody like Lindsay Clancy. That's actually the reality, by the way. And in some ways, that is sad. But the system failed Lindsay Clancy by refusing to prevent what ultimately took place in that basement. The reality is there's no medication out there that works for what Lindsay Clancy was going through or what she had. There's medication that in some ways dulls it or makes it, makes you more passive, but it ultimately leaves the actual user of the medication feeling worse in different ways, comes with its own problems. There is no actual answer medically for this. The system didn't fail Lindsay Clancy because of any of that. It failed because it didn't prevent Lindsay Clancy from doing what she ultimately did. And there's a whole host of reasons behind why that system's in place and why it continues to fail. I will say this. If there's one silver lining in any of this, especially not with even just Lindsay Clancy herself, the silver lining is watching all of this support unfold for Lindsay Clancy in the form of conspiracy theory women insisting that Patrick Clancy's actually the killer, or in the form of Star Trek Enterprise level deflection shield type women insisting that it's still Patrick Clancy's fault because maybe he didn't kill his children, but he just wasn't there enough for his wife, despite doing all of what I listed prior for her. Or the women who are showing up in solidarity and support outside of the courthouse in hundreds, wearing pink, and greeting her like a hero. If there's one silver lining for single men in 2026, it's that a new litmus test has now been born when it comes to dating. You want to know if you're selecting an appropriate mate for you, somebody who's mentally all there, insane, and of good morals? Just ask for their opinions on Lindsay Clancy. I recommend doing that on a first date or even before then. You match with somebody on a dating app, see what their stance is on Lindsay Clancy. It'll weed them all out pretty quickly. And I'm actually being serious, by the way. I'm kind of saying it to joke, but I'm actually being serious. Because if anything, if you're a man and you're seeing how this is all unfolding, your eyes should be more wide open than ever before. My eyes have always been pretty wide open. They're even more wide open now, as we watch a literal cult be formed by delusional low IQ bimbos centered around Lindsay Clancy and supporting her or trying to exonerate her. And even more seriously than all of that, these women coming together is meant to state one thing. This is the actual sinister agenda of all of this. This is the final end product of feminism on display. It's in its death thralls, as America truthfully enters its death thralls. This is the beginnings of the collapse of civilization. Truthfully, this is what it always looks like. We're living through it right now. And these women coming together in support of Lindsay Clancy, what it states truthfully, and what many of them openly just even say in some varying different ways and to varying different degrees, is that women, many of them, relate to a woman in the postmodern, post-feminist age. They relate to a woman who killed her children, all of them. Because many women either want to do the same, or they believe in some way that it's freedom to be able to do so, or they have been sold at the very least the lie of feminism that motherhood is slavery and motherhood is restrictive. They've been sold the polar opposite of the truth on that. Motherhood is the ultimate goal of women. It is what women are here to be and to do. They're here to be mothers. And feminism has rotted society to its core so much that women now look at another woman who literally strangled to death methodically and slowly all three of her children. And they now worship her and create a cult for her and greet her like a hero outside the courthouse and wear pink for her and post social media videos about her and openly say they relate to her, and they create conspiracy theories in an attempt to exonerate her. This is the final product of feminism in America. The movement is also sort of a social pressure campaign too by these women, with an obvious attempt to quite literally not just celebrate Lindsay Clancy and acknowledge the fact that what she went through seems to be a much larger problem than most men would be comfortable acknowledging. But they're literally, with these conspiracy theory efforts and this entire social pressure campaign, hundreds of women outside the courthouse, the other goal in all of that is to find a way to help Lindsay Clancy escape the charges that she should be handed. And those charges, of course, should be the death penalty. This is a cut and dry case. Lindsay Clancy killed the most innocent form of life you could ask for. One of her children was 8 months old. She should be put to death. That's it. There should be no bones about it. But these women are coming together and they're rallying in support for a multitude of reasons, and one of them is to ultimately try to help Lindsay Clancy escape what her fate should be. And that's significant, actually, because if this works, people aren't thinking ahead. You always have to think ahead. If this works, and if these women create this pressure campaign, and in some way Lindsay Clancy isn't put to death, or at minimum, not that I even agree with this outcome. I think it's the death penalty or nothing. Lindsay Clancy should just be put to death. At minimum, life in prison without the chance of parole. If these women coming together allow and they pressure socially from a societal standpoint, etc., and it allows for an opportunity for Lindsay Clancy to escape justice, and she's able to escape what her punishment should be, this will be used as a social precedent going forward now. It will allow women to once again claim the moral high ground in society over men and over children even. The implications of Lindsay Clancy not being punished for murdering her 3 children, which she freely admits to doing and acknowledges that she remembers it. She locked the door. She called her husband back after missing his call while presumably murdering his children, and by all accounts had a normal conversation with him. She then tried to kill herself. She was all there. She understood every step of the way what she was doing. That's why she tried to kill herself. That's called guilt, or at the very least trying to escape accountability, which implies that you understood what you did and why that it was wrong at the very least. She locked the door premeditatively. She strangled them one by one and took them down in the basement. And it just doesn't seem to matter, because if she's allowed to escape this, and I pray that she is, and I pray she is put to death, they'll be able to claim this moral high ground, because this whole case is now centered around women dodging accountability. She was in a postpartum psychosis state, and that means that she's absolved. That's the actual argument from women. And if you think this is not a serious problem, and if you think I'm just really trying to stretch this out and imply stuff that's not going to happen, or is a little too fantasy-like, if you think I'm just being delusional about it, well, look no further than this. This is also what they're saying. Right here. CCG Bryson. I don't know who that even is. Sorry, but postpartum depression is not an excuse to kill your children. Death penalty. A woman, Linda. Actually, it is, she says. Actually, yeah, it is, she says. Like, that's a real tweet right there. Actually, yeah, it is, she says. Also, beyond that, take a look at this. It's already happening. Lindsay Clancy, she's not the only one. North Dakota mom of 3 cut 3 kids' throats while in bed before cops followed blood trail to an evil scene. This article actually further expands on that right here. Do you think Lindsay Clancy is a unique situation? No, not at all. Mother slits throats of her 3 children, told their father, "Say goodbye to your kids." Mandan, North Dakota. A mother allegedly murdered 2 of her young children by slitting their throats and attempted to kill another after telling their father, "Say goodbye to your kids." According to an affidavit obtained by Valley News Live, officers responded to a residence on the afternoon of August 6th. August 6th, that was about 3 weeks ago, regarding a report of a mother who stabbed her children. First responders arrived to find the mother, 22-year-old Kaylee Earhart, holding a knife to her own throat in the home, per the affidavit. Earhart, who was covered in blood, reportedly dropped the knife and told officers to kill her. After detaining the woman, officers found 3 young children who were lying unresponsive on the floor in a nearby bedroom. The children were all suffering from wounds to their necks, authorities said. A 5-month-old, a 3-year-old succumbed to their injuries and died, but a 1-year-old survived the ordeal following extensive surgery. Investigators learned that prior to the murder, Earhart chased the father of the children and grandmother from the home with a knife, the affidavit said. The father told authorities that he managed to take a gun from Earhart, disassemble it, and dispose of the pieces before she locked him out of the house. The man reportedly showed police a video he took on his phone of Earhart carrying one of the children with the pistol on her hip. Say goodbye to your kids, Earhart allegedly said in the video. How will this case be handled is the next question. If Lindsay Clancy is allowed to walk, if she's able to take the insanity plea essentially and walk from all of this, this is what I mean. This is not a unique case. Women are not the angels that they try to convince you that they are. This is not even the second case of this. Women have been doing this. It's actually always historically been a problem. And if Lindsay Clancy is allowed to walk, then will this Earhart lady too be able to just plea insanity? Because guess what the defense team for Earhart's going to cook up? They're going to say a male voice in her head told her to do it, just like Lindsay Clancy. Uh-oh, looks like she entered into a state of psychosis, and we all know what that means. Because she's a woman in a state of psychosis, she's no longer responsible for her actions. Terrible thing that happened, yeah, but looks like we can't put her to death or put her in prison for life. That's just not moral. It's not her fault. This is the problem. This is going to be a big problem. And here's the other thing. If women aren't taking it that far, they're not murdering their children like Lindsay Clancy did, just understand that women are willing to go to all different degrees. Women are not stable. A lot of them, at least. This woman right here, she's made the news recently as well. Because what she wound up doing was, let me mute it. She wound up lighting a fire in her kitchen on the floor, coating herself in candle wax, twerking and dancing suggestively off of the counters while the flame was on the kitchen floor. And after all of that, she brought her children into the room and poured hot wax on them as well. This took place in Florida, also not that long ago. And then there's this. This is not life-threatening, obviously, or anything, but this also demonstrates the mental state of a lot of women. They say they're the most nurturing sex out there, but the longer I live, the more I feel like that's not even true, because this video is going viral, and it turns out people have done some digging, and this is not the only video of this. I mean, not the end of the world, but that's funny to some women, I guess. And there's multiple videos of her doing it now surfacing. So again, what are we doing here? And here's the thing with all of this. And here's what I also wanted to point out. More people are going to be forced to realize just how sick society is. And why do I say that? Because women are the weakness. A society is only as strong as its weakest link. Any chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Women are always the weakest link. That's how they're designed. There is no area of life where women are stronger than men on. I don't care how that makes people feel. That's the truth. And so what's nice is, this is all on display now, and it's having sort of a revolutionary effect on some right-wing speakers. One right-wing speaker in particular, who I do enjoy, but always just had a problem with because he's a wife guy, and, he's always the, I wear my cool flannel shirts, and I have a full beard, and I love 80s music. If you don't listen to 80s music, you're just gay. And, life is about your wife. Women are such mysterious creatures. I love them. They're just amazing. And life is about having more kids than you can afford. And that's my recommendation to all of Gen Z in this horrendous economy where we're being told to stretch our ground beef with refried beans and live in the golden age and suck it up and get replaced by AI. Go out, marry a woman, and have more kids than you can afford. I'm obviously, maybe it's not that obvious. I'm talking about Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh had this to say on Twitter. in regards to all of this. He was speaking on the fact that these women in these pink shirts showing up outside the courthouse and supporting her have managed to raise almost $1 million in support for Lindsay Clancy. And he says, unspeakably evil. This whole thing has been eye-opening in the worst ways. I'll never be able to unsee thousands of women rallying to the defense of a demon who strangled her child to death. One of the darkest things I've ever seen in my life. Between this and the Carmelo Anthony fundraiser, we are getting a glimpse into this kind of cultural rot that cannot be easily waved away. And it is about time. It's about time that Matt Walsh finally recognizes just how bad it is for young men out there. The advice of get married young and have more kids than you can afford. Though that actually in some ways fixes the GDP and long-term health of a country, a lot of these older guys can't actually understand the true plight of young men in the 2026 dating markets or in society in general. Matt Walsh was one of them, and this is certainly an eye-opening experience for him. What I also want to highlight too, though, is that unfortunately, though Matt Walsh has seemingly woken up from this, we're seeing other right-wing figures say stuff a little differently here. Because, of course, even on the right-wing side of the aisle, the women are still deflecting, looking for excuses, taking the soft and gentle approach. Lila Rose, she's really annoying. I can barely stand her. I don't even really watch her. Lindsay Clancy reportedly sought help repeatedly before the deaths of her children. That should haunt us. When a mother is clearly deteriorating, our healthcare system cannot afford to simply move her from appointment to appointment without asking whether the treatment is actually working. And then Tommy Lauren, who's been kind of based lately, a little critical of Trump and the golden age and the economy, a little bit on Gen Z's side. Well, she's noticing all the blowback. And this is what you have to understand about women. I'm going to explain this in a second. She says, I know a lot of Republicans don't want to hear this, but the right is on the verge of making the same mistake with young women that the left did with young men. I know some of these women are fun to mock, and I get it, and I do it too. But we have to be better if we want to bring them over to our side. If we totally alienate young women, we will not win elections. We have to find a way to appeal to them, she says. Why is she saying that now? It's because of the Lindsay Clancy case. What is she advocating for in actuality in a tweet like that? Let me just pull that tweet up right now on the screen here. What is she advocating for in a tweet like this? She's literally saying we must appeal to women despite their disgusting attitudes and actions. She's saying maybe we shouldn't criticize Lindsay Clancy so much. She did a terrible thing, but let's try to just sweep that under the rug as fast as possible. It turns off too many potential female voters, she says. I know some of these women are fun to mock, but we have to do better. Really? That's the opposite prognosis that I have for what's going on here. And that leads me to my main and final point in all of this. First of all, we are living in what I would refer to as a gynocentric society. It's a borderline matriarchy. The patriarchy can take back control anytime it wants. That's the nature of the patriarchy. It is the actual strength, but it's been suppressed. The patriarchy has been suppressed intentionally for decades. Feminism was ushered in to accomplish that. We're now seeing the final results in feminism. Women murder their children and they're celebrated for it by other women. They're literally lionized and made into a hero and worshipped. A cult is being formed around Lindsay Clancy because she murdered her children. And for the ones that don't embrace the cult, some of them are taking to the internet to find any means necessary to blame the husband, whether blaming him for not being supportive enough or outright accusing him of killing his own children and framing his wife for it. This is what feminism gets you. And it springs all from the lack of accountability, the pedestalization of women in our country, and weak, submissive men giving way to women and allowing them to run the show. The fathers raise their daughters, these these fathers that have 5 daughters and no sons, they raise all of them to be these perfect little prissy bitchy princesses who grew up spoiled, entitled, and take on a narcissistic spirit. It's all about them. They're selfish. They're psyoped by feminism. They're raised spoiled by their fathers, and they grow up. They don't submit to a husband. They don't even find a husband. They abhor the idea of becoming a mother. They think it's slavery. They wind up despising children as a result, which leads to them finding it funny to torment a baby, a newborn, by splashing cold water on its face multiple times and laughing over it. They worship abortion. Feminism destroys society. It's not the men that support any of this. Men don't support abortion. Women do. Women, 70% almost of women, I think it's actually 70% exactly, support abortion. I believe it's 60% support abortion in any stage, even the 3rd trimester, late stage. It's women who support open borders immigration that's destroying our country. Over 60% of women support that. It's women who supported the rise of sodomy that deteriorates normal relationships in our society and is a plague and curse on this land. It's women who supported transgenderism. Over 50% of women supported men playing in women's sports. It's all the women. And it's the church that took a back step to women. It's the church that lost its balls, the men in the church that lost their balls, that decided, you know what, we can't make women submit, so instead we should just make men weaker. We should just focus on male accountability more. Your woman won't submit, she won't behave, that's your fault as a man. You clearly don't have control of your wife. But they'll never actually turn around and look at the woman and say, shut the fuck up and obey your husband. Wasn't that your vow at the altar? Of course, nowadays, that's not even the vow anymore at the altar for most wedding ceremonies. To love and obey? Man, are they quick to take that one out. All of it is being done to cater to women in a gynocentric society. And this is part of the biblical curse we find written about in Isaiah. When a land is cursed, it is flooded by third world immigrants, and it is ruled over by women in positions of power. And all of the women instinctually stick together because it's part of their social nature to do so. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. Ostracizing women, that when a woman is ostracized, that is perhaps her greatest fear. Let me say it that way. Because they are herd mentality people. Because they don't have the physical strength of a woman, their psychology is different. Safety is in numbers, and those numbers are more readily found amongst other women. They can't get along with each other forever. They wind up hating each other almost always, but they also need each other. So they're very differently focused on different social aspects. So ostracizing them is the biggest threat. So instinctually, many of them will come together almost always to defend each other in the matriarchy. That's why even Tomi Lahren is saying this. Tomi Lahren is literally, basically, without saying it because she's a conservative, she crafts together this tweet. Again, look at it. She crafts together this tweet. I know Republicans don't want to hear this, but the right is on the verge of making the same mistake with young women that the left did with young men. I know some of these women are fun to mock, and I get it, and I do it too. But we do have to be better if we want to bring them over to our side. If we totally alienate young women, we won't win elections. We have to find a way to appeal to them. She even goes on to say, by the way, making fun of girl bosses and telling women they shouldn't value their careers too much might make for some fun podcast banter, but it's alienating and pissing off a lot of otherwise conservative women. Just thought you should know. Last thing, you know who is the ultimate advocate for girl bosses? Donald J. Trump, she says. And I responded to that. I said, yes, he is. And look how that administration is going. Kristi Noem fired for spending as much money as Marvel Studios did to make Avengers in 2012. Only Kristi Noem took that money and got all dolled up on a horse outside of Mount Rushmore for a commercial where she tells illegal aliens to go back home. Pam Bondi spent more time on Fox News after getting dolled up making empty vain threats against the Epstein class and Deep State than she did actually getting anything done. She was fired. Susie Wiles strictly controls who has access to President Trump and his administration and is careful to ensure that he doesn't directly hear anything in person from someone that would hurt his feelings because it criticizes his very obvious poor decisions lately. Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, yet to be fired, probably won't be, and behind the scenes has been begging Trump to take it easy on the farmers when it comes to actual internal removals of illegal aliens, since the farmers rely on being able to severely underpay them in order to cut costs and increase their profit margins. We've had enough of boss babes. Women not only won't save America, they're ruining America. Feminism is ruining it. Men will save it. Women will do what they have always done: fall in line behind the men. That is what is important to recognize. We don't actually need to appeal to the women. We need to subjugate them. Women are supposed to submit to men. The answer to all of this is not to appeal to women. Patrick Clancy did everything he could to appease and appeal to his wife, and she murdered all 3 of his children for it and tried to kill herself. She threw it all away. The answer is never to appeal to women. The answer is to serve God and rein in your women. And therefore, the answer to all of this, what I alluded to earlier, and what is a stark reminder even to me who was already aware of this to begin with. I was born just a little too smart to not be able to see through the female nature and spirit. And even I will freely admit, you know what? There's another term that must be added into our goal. The cure for all of this is Christianity and nationalism. It's the cure for all of America's problems. But specifically in this case, and it makes you realize going forward in all cases, that it's actually a very distinct blend of Christian nationalism that is the cure. Because Tomi Lahren might go so far as to call herself a Christian and a nationalist, which would therefore make her possibly, or potentially at least, a Christian nationalist. She might admit that, she might not. Women don't like to take controversial points of view, but even internally she might believe it then. That being said, she advocates against the patriarchy. She's not in favor of the patriarchy. So what America actually needs, and what we must remember, is that it needs patriarchal Christian nationalism. That's the cure. America wasn't founded by third world immigrants or Jews. It wasn't founded by women. It was founded by white Christian men. They came here and they founded this nation. They fought for its independence and freedom, and they've maintained it ever since. They built this society. They built our cities. The women, they manage the home. And in doing so, they raise the generations that rise up and continue on in the legacy of the nation. And it is an important role. But women have been allowed to massively overstep that role. And we're in the gynocentric society now, where they are dictating to the men what you can and can't say, what you should or shouldn't do. And at the end of the day, the end result is always the same. It's still your fault no matter what. And men have become so prioritized with women that they're not focused on anything else. And now men aren't even getting the women because hypergamy is set in and social media has magnified it, so relationships don't last, and wealthy guys in Dubai fly these women out, or at least they used to before the Iran war. So you're being outbid for the women, and the society is entirely collapsing. The answer to this is patriarchal Christian nationalism. And under such a patriarchy, that is where we find the cure. Because recognize this, rationalizing or reasoning with women is a futile task. They're not logical or reasonable. They're just emotional. And not only are they emotional, but they're more than ever on SSRIs and Xanax and the insane amount of birth control that they're taking. They drink wine throughout the day. They go out and party every weekend. They're couch rotting when they're not doing that, and they're filling their head with true crime podcasts, obsessing over murders and death. And an umbrella over all of that is that they've been hopelessly or almost hopelessly psyoped by feminism. So this is what you get. You get women like this. This is the latest therapy recommendation on display going viral by women who apparently get mad at their kids or at their husband or boyfriend or their current situation. This is what they resort to doing. My biggest struggle being a new mom is my anger, she says. I saw a TikTok suggesting you throw ice in your bathroom, she says. 10 out of 10 recommend. There's more. Here's some more ice throwing. Postpartum rage got the best of me today, she says. Now remember, they have to premeditate this situation and conceive of it in their heads. They then have to go in their bathroom. They have to grab the ice, go in their bathroom, set up their phone, make sure it's at a good angle, probably test record it, and then they have to work themselves up into a fit and start crying and screaming. Here's another one for you. I think it's the same girl who was throwing ice in the bathroom 2 clips ago, beating her door with a pillow. All right, that's enough of that. Here's another one. Same girl again, I think. She's going viral for just her fits of rage, it looks like. When she's mad, she struggles with her anger being a mom. She's looking for new ways to release her anger. So she takes her clothing and rips it. Here's the harsh reality for men. Women are just a third child. If you have 2 kids at home and a wife, you have 3 children. You have 1 who's an adult and 2 who are becoming adults. Women have a toddler-like mentality for the most part. They don't understand the world the same way men do. They rip their clothing online for views and to release anger. That's what a toddler would do. They throw ice at the bathtub in the bathroom and scream in a fit of rage. That's a temper tantrum that you would expect from a 7-year-old. This is the reality. This is what men are dealing with now. And the counter to it is the patriarchy, because the patriarchy comes in and it enters with logic, not emotions. We come in and the patriarchy comes in and it enters with true discipline. Because here's the actual problem with all of this. The patriarchy is discipline, but feminists have instilled the notion over the years of not judging. Don't shame anybody. We don't do that. We don't shame people over what they do or what decisions they've made. We don't judge people. That's the feminist lie. But the patriarchy comes in and it exists to instill and maintain order in society and peace. Women inherently hate those concepts, which tells you all you need to know about them. So the answer to dealing with women like this is shame. The phenomenon that we're watching break out right now over Lindsay Clancy, that sees all of these women rising up and taking to the streets and forming a cult and talking about how they've thought about killing their children too. Shame is the answer. For the women who've thought about killing their children, shame them. Expose them online, share it everywhere, shame them, and ensure that Child Protective Services comes and takes their child away. Consequences and shame. In fact, there's even an ancient Greek story that was written about this, and I shared this on my X account over the phenomenon of Lindsay Clancy. I'm going to click on it right now. It was once again in context to another ICE video. But this is what I had to say. This is the Greek story from 277 BC, the Greek city of Miletus, or Miletus, however you say it. I think you'd say it Miletus. 277 BC, the Greek city of Miletus witnesses a young girl in early adulthood commit suicide. The city mourns the tragedy, but the women of the city take note of something else throughout it all. They take note of the level of attention the girl received for killing herself. This leads to a new epidemic in the city of young girls committing suicide for attention. The problem continued to persist until a solution was finally presented. Was that solution asking the young women of the town if they're okay? Appealing to them like Tommy Lauren perhaps suggests? Or what everyone could be doing better to not make them want to kill themselves? No. That's a fool's errand to ask that, and everyone knows it. Understanding that the root cause was just a woman's insatiable appetite for attention, the city of Miletus creates a new law. Any woman who commits suicide will have her lifeless body stripped naked and paraded out in the streets in front of crowds to the sounds of jeering laughter and celebration. The second this law was established, all suicides by young women miraculously stopped. Shame is what solves the problem, and shame is what is currently lacking in our society. And shame will never be instilled in somebody in a matriarchal or gynocentric society. That's where the patriarchy comes in, the masculine spirit. If you're in a circle of friends and they're all men and one of them starts getting fat, the women will think it's mean. They'll never say anything. Any women nearby. The men, they'll tease each other. Oh, you're getting a little chubby there. What's going on, you know? We'll joke about it, but there's a little element of shame there. Don't get too fat. It's disgusting. But women will never say that. They'll do the opposite, in fact. They'll find a 300-pound ogre of a bitch, and they'll try to force it onto you that that's a beautiful woman. They're gross. They're fat. They're a disgusting slob. But the women will never admit it. It's the men who do. The patriarchy must return. And that is what saves America. And that's the message in all of this. It's not just Christian nationalism that must return. It's patriarchal Christian nationalism. Shame must be brought back. Consequences must return. And women naturally avoid accountability, shame, and consequences. But because of fourth wave feminism, men are weaker than ever, and the gynocentric matriarchal society we're living in doesn't tolerate or prohibit or even advocate for any of those things. And that's why our society is falling apart domestically. That's all I've got to say about that. This stream went really long tonight. I didn't mean for it to go so long. And I'm surprised there's even as many viewers still in the chat as there are, but I appreciate all you guys for being here. I'll take a look at any of the chats. I know the horizontal stream is full of my diehards, but a lot of them are probably asleep by now because some of them are a little on the older side, like Howard. I don't know if Howard's still here, but the Muslims are all over this, says Howard. That's another good point, actually. And let me even just say that. I tried to say this on X, but they actually banned the video. Because I shared a video of a Muslim man taking a I think it looked like a pool noodle, actually, to be fair. It looked like a pool noodle. But yeah, I mean, you know, his wife did something and he was going at it. I will say that. The Muslim men, for all their problems and all their faults, boy, do they keep their women in line. Do you ever think you'd go outside and see a bunch of Muslim women wearing pink shirts with the pen or Sharpie written on it, "We're standing for Lindsay Clancy, a woman who murdered her 3 children"? Absolutely fucking not. Muslim women are kept in check by their men. And why? Because the Muslim faith and Muslim men in general are a patriarchal culture and society. Look at the rest of the world for the most part, except for any European ones. Do the Chinese have this problem? No. Do the Koreans, North Koreans specifically? Because the South Koreans are getting bad, actually. Feminism is destroying South Korea right now. Is this a problem in North Korea? Or even in Russia? Or in China? Or in any parts of Africa even? No, it's not. It's a problem unique to white people specifically. It's a problem unique, even more so, to America. Because even European white women aren't as bad from what I'm seeing. But it's certainly not a problem in the Middle East. You will never see Muslim women out there acting a fool and supporting a murderer of her own children. Ever, ever, ever. And it does just speak, even if you want to disagree in principle on what the Muslim faith stands for, and you should, even if you want to agree in principle how they go about treating every other facet of their marriage or whatever else, one thing you cannot say is that Muslim women are out of control, raging bull, domineering bitches who are annoying and destroying society. You can't say that. All right. Anybody saying anything good in chat? Upland77 says, okay, you're right. See, that's the kind of chat I'm looking for. Evangelicals are destroying this country. Well, and you know, I'm a Protestant Christian. I'm a Protestant. But yeah, it is a shame. Protestantism is responsible, essentially, for forming America in the West. And it is sad to see what it's turned into to varying degrees. My church is pretty fucking based. The church I grew up in is pretty based. I'll give them their dues. There's church discipline that exists within it and everything else. But overall, it was completely, the Christian faith in the West has been completely dismantled and destroyed. And, this watered down, bastardized, feminized Christianity is not doing our nation a service. It's not doing its inhabitants a service. It's doing it all a disservice. The church is supposed to protect this morality, and the church has completely given way to the Jezebel spirit and submitted to women, and they're too afraid to approach women or correct women, and it's horrendous. It's all horrendous. And it's just such a very obvious problem. Republicans hate their children? Really? Really, do tell. I'm seeing there's a lot of chat swine in here. For the love of God, some of you are insane. I gotta play the warning at this point with all the intellectually inferior beings. Yuck. Yeah, I don't cast my pearls to swine here. David Cooper, you like that one? He says Muslims do have that one right. Yeah, one thing. Bottom line is equality has been distorted. Well, equality is a myth, Howard. Equality is a myth. Egalitarianism has sort of become an idol for a lot of Americans to worship. And it's all a myth. There's literally no such thing as equality, not in truth. We observe equality from the standpoint of we're all made equal in the image of God. And that's in some ways also what America was founded as by our founding fathers. Equal in God. But yeah, I mean, the Bible is a patriarchal book, and it has a hierarchy set up by God. It is God first, then the man, the husband, and then the woman and children. And without that system in effect, everything deteriorates, and it always does. David Cooper in the vertical chat now, too, he says, you chat swine. That's all that they are. That's all that they are. They're just swine. They're so far beneath me. They're intellectually inferior beings. I am a fisher of men, though. I do look for the good ones. Lisa Romero says, you are a disgrace. The things you are saying are incredibly evil. Hey, bitch, shut the fuck up. Hey, listen, Lisa, are you here to find out what I want on my sandwich? I take turkey, bacon, lettuce, tomato, a lot of onion, and mayonnaise, and fucking toast the bread, bitch. Toast it before you put the mayonnaise on it. Because if I get a soggy sandwich, not good. Selena Girl says a woman sent her car into a lake, killing her 2 little boys. Yep, that was not that long ago either. She then made up that some black man did it. Well, and ultimately, I think what she wound up going with was that it wasn't a black man, but that there was a voice in her head that told her to do it. That's what these women are doing. That's what it is. That's why this Clancy case is so important. She must be sentenced either to death or life in prison. I would prefer death. Lindsay Clancy should be put to death. And we got to bring back public executions. I want to see it. I want to be able to see her get killed by the government, righteously so. I want to see it. And I want a lot of other people to be able to see it, especially women. Yeah, you kill your child, you murder your 3 babies. Yeah, you're going to get put to death publicly, and the world's going to watch, and you'll be remembered as a disgrace. You fucking cunt. That's what I want to watch. That's what's missing. Humiliation and shame. Bring them back. That's all I've got to say about that, though, guys. Listen, I appreciate everybody who's still stuck around for this long of a stream. I usually don't go this long, stream-wise. So it's pretty cool that you guys have been around for that. If you enjoyed that, be sure to like the stream. If you haven't already, double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button. It's not free to do, and it really is the least you could do while I'm dropping all kinds of wisdom and knowledge on all of you ungrateful swine and cattle and goy scum in chat. The least you could do is like the stream. You can't even afford to pay your super chat tariffs. You can't ever click that $ below to support the channel. By the way, thank you to my super chatters tonight. Beck Fan, I know, was one of them. Michael Cox, if you're still in here, I thanked you for your super chat last night. I missed that one last night. Thank you to those. But for the rest of you poor goyim scum, double tap your phone screen or hit the thumbs up button. That's the least you could do. And if you really like the content, subscribe and turn on post notifications so you're notified every time I go live, which is most nights of the week. Other than that, though, guys, listen. Best country on earth by far. Still wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But my God, are we going to have a lot of battles ahead of us to restore it to glory and save it. And women are on the list of things that must be overcome. Restore the patriarchy. Patriarchal Christian nationalism must thrive again. And it will have to be ushered in by what will likely be predominantly white men. We gotta wake the fuck up. The demographic that everyone wants to demonize is turning out to be the only sane demographic left. White men. Carmelo Anthony kills a white guy, makes his family a fortune as all the black people come together to support and donate to him. Lindsay Clancy kills her 3 babies, and women, white women mostly, rise up almost in unanimous support, it seems, to donate what will likely be $1 million or more to her parents in order to benefit her and her case and her parents, etc. It's all insane, all of it. White Christian men founded America, and white Christian men will save it. Bring back the patriarchy, bitches. Have a great rest of your evening. I'll see you guys back here live tomorrow. Take care.
There are too many minorities. Too many at my water park. Somebody do something. Where did they all come from? Why can't they leave this land alone? And it's such a tragedy. Feel bad like dying. We look the other way too long. We've got to change our priorities and get all these minorities out of my water park.